Hey, everybody. I have 6:01 p.m. It is Thursday, April 30th, 2020. This is the Nashua Board of Education. We are meeting via Zoom teleconference pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, Section 8, and Emergency Order 12, Section 3. Mr. Guarino, could you please call the roll?
Okay. Mr. Guarino is here. Ms.
Oh,
Johnson?
I'm
Yes.
sorry. Please remember to note that you are home or wherever you are, and why you are not attending in person. I forgot last time.
I am home and by myself and keeping social distance in accordance with governor's proclamations. Ms. Johnson?
I'm present. I'm home alone, and I'm not publicly because we've been told to stay home.
Ms. Ziem?
I'm here. I'm not alone, but I'm in a room by myself, and for the same reasons as everybody else, COVID.
Ms. Bishop?
I'm here. I am in my house. My kids will come in and out, but I'm home in accordance to social distancing, and I'm present.
Ms. Giglio?
I'm here in my house by myself, well, with all of you, and it's because of the virus that we're not meeting in person. So I'm happy to be where I am right now.
Ms. Raymond?
Yep, I'm here. I'm in my dining room. Like many others, I have children here at home with me who may wander across the screen at some point during the evening, but I promise they will not influence any of my decision making this evening.
Ms. Brown?
I am present. I am at my house I'm not alone in the building, but I'm alone in the room, practicing social distancing.
Ms. Oden?
Yes, I'm here. I'm in a room by myself and practicing social distancing.
Ms. Timmons?
I'm here. I'm home alone, and the same reason why everyone else is doing.
Mr. Norris?
I'm here. I'm in a room alone. I don't have to worry about my kids running in on me. And I'm for all the same reasons, COVID.
Mr. Gio.
Mr. Gal? Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, no worries. I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to speak.
I got dogs running around upstairs.
I'm here. I'm home and also home because I'm practicing social distancing.
Thank you.
You're muted again, Ray.
Also with us is Dr. Mosley.
I'm here. I'm in my bedroom and I'm practicing social distancing.
Dr. McKinney.
I'm here all by myself, practicing social distancing.
Ms. Fitzpatrick.
I'm here. I'm home, practicing social distancing.
Ms. O'Gara.
I'm here. I'm home. I have children in the house that are grown and cats, but I am practicing social distancing.
Okay. Mr. Donovan.
I'm here, practicing social distancing and looking forward to a wonderful meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Hi, I'm here alone and being socially distant.
Okay. Mr. Richard.
I'm present. I am in my home. My family is here, but we are separated at the time and social distancing.
Mr. Burns.
I'm also present. My family is here in the house with me, but not in the room. and looking forward to a good night.
We also have with us Mike Davey.
Here and with 4 children screaming downstairs.
And Chris Chlorite. Did I say it correctly? Sorry.
No, it's fine. No one gets it right the first time. Clarity, and I am here and with family in separate room.
Thank you. And we also have Jeff. Are you with Nashua ETV? We have Jeff.
Jeff is with Nashua's ETV, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. So to begin this evening, Mr. Davey and Mr. Clorady are here to give us a presentation, or at least a discussion regarding the energy savings contract that they have prepared and was in our packets for the high schools, correct? Yeah. Okay, so if one of y'all would like to take it away, we are interested to hear what you have to say.
Okay, so we have been working with Nashua School District since 2018. There was an RFQ that was issued with the goal of looking at ways to save energy, primarily at the high schools to start. So the high schools are by far and away the biggest energy users in the district, and although they're getting close to 20 years old, there's some significant opportunities to reduce energy throughout the district. So an RFQ was issued. I think they had 7 companies respond, and EEI was selected in partnership with Control Technologies, who does controls at most of the schools in the district for the HVAC and building automation. We've been working with one of the divisions of the school board, I forget the name, the sites committee, or the building and facilities committee. Plants and operations, sorry. And we've been looking at what should be done and what was decided on and what was voted to move forward to the full board was a project that would be budget neutral and financed over a period of not more than 20 years. It would be a comprehensive lighting retrofit to both buildings going to LED, an upgrade of the HVAC control system, high efficiency hot water systems. They'd be 98% efficient hot water, replacing the transformers. So the current transformers are about 93% efficient, which sounds good, but that means about 7% of all the power that goes through the transformer is lost in the form of unnecessary heat in the electrical rooms. So we would replace those with 99% efficient transformers. And we've successfully done similar projects in many of the Manchester, Portsmouth, and Keene schools. And so the facilities team became familiar with our past experience. We came up with a project that will be budget neutral. So both high schools would be renovated with energy efficient equipment. Those would be, all the work would be done over the break period. The energy savings each year would be guaranteed to pay for the finance costs. We've also met with the energy manager from the city of Nashua and received support from that department. I think she's trying to call in, Doria. So that's a broad update. And so tonight we're seeking approval, moving this process forward to go to the Board of Aldermen for a final approval. And again, it would be budget neutral, that the energy savings would pay for this work over the finance period.
Oops, thank you so much. And I see that Ms. Doria Brown has just joined us. Welcome to you, Ms. Brown. I forgot your exact title at the city, energy manager, something along those lines.
Energy person, whatever.
Okay. Well, welcome. Welcome. Did you have something to add, Ms. Brown?
I just got on and I just heard Mike say that it is a financially neutral project, so you'll be saving on the cost of energy from the efficiency of the project, which is amazing. And I think it's a good move for the schools because you'll get to upgrade these buildings and move forward towards a more carbon neutral building, which I think is definitely needed.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Ms. Ziem, you had a question? Oh, you're on mute, Ms. Ziem. Nope.
Knows how to do it. You know. Thank
I
you.
see that you have your technical manager.
Yeah, he's
helping you out.
8 years old. He's smarter than I am. I just hope for the future. I just wanted to ask him, did he say 20 years? It takes 20 years to cover the cost with the financing was 20 years?
Yeah, it would be up to 20 years. Yes, that would be the maximum period.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. First of all, Heather, Ms. Freeman, I just want to ask a question. This was back in December 5th of 2019. I guess this came to the board originally?
I believe so. I think it came to, not to us here at the full board, but was the initial proposal at finance.
Okay. Okay, here's my question. About 20 years ago, we had an energy manager that came into the school district and promised us that we would have a big savings. We were teaching people how to shut lights off, and they went through the whole school, and we were going to have a substantial savings. I don't know whatever happened as I moved over to the Board of Aldermen after we passed that. So I guess in this, because you talk about here, EEI has asked to evaluate both 15-year and 20-year leasing options. So we're going to lease this either 15 or 20 years. And the savings that we get out every month is going to pay the lease payments. Is that what it's going to be? I guess I should ask you, Mr. Donovan.
That would be correct.
Okay.
The savings of energy will pay for the cost of the lease, and EEI will guarantee that be the case. Any extra savings will then occur down in the operating budget. And
Okay.
we will be getting new lights, new transformers, we'll be upgrading our facilities.
Okay, so like on the summer months when school's not open, how is it going to work then with the savings? Because we're not going to be using as much electricity, so our payments wouldn't be as big. Is that correct?
It's the payments on an annual basis, so it's based on the entire year's energy usage.
Okay, so we wouldn't be making monthly payments. We would be making payments at the end of the year, basically. So we would take this money and put this into a fund, I guess, so somewhat an energy fund. So the payments would be made at the end of the year. So the savings would be calculated. Am I correct somewhere here? Mr. Donovan, I guess?
Not exactly, but yes. What you're trying to say is yes. We will match up the savings with the payments within the same calendar year.
Okay, so when we have I guess my question is, so when we have the savings at the end of the month, where does that savings of the money going to go? Are we going to be putting it like into an account for energy savings payments, or so this way we know the money's put away?
No, I think what you would look at it, for example, if you were paying $100 for an electric bill at the high school, the electric bill would only be $80 now. So you would be saving that, and you would then take that 20 and use it to pay the lease fee. That's a sort of a simplified version of it. I think we're going to, Mike, it's a quarterly savings.
Yeah, the payment is typically annually, and you'll receive updates on the performance quarterly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Brown?
Thank you. I had a question for Mr. Davies in regards to the longevity of the life of the transformers. You mentioned that right now we're at a pretty solid efficiency rate, but obviously I like the idea of a budget neutral item and reducing our carbon footprint. But how long before we start to see a reduction in efficiency of those transformers? When we get done paying them off, are we going to need to buy new ones, or will there be some life left?
For transformers, the estimated useful life is 55 years. So, and it's unlikely that the technology will get better. It's going to be hard to get a lot better than 99% efficiency. So it should have a significant long life on the transformers.
Does anyone else have any other questions or comments? Ms. Ziem?
So the guarantee that the company is giving us, is that in writing? And if we do not make this savings, does that guarantee mean that they will make up the difference?
Yes.
Thank you. I love it. Thank you.
And Mrs. Ziem, just to let you know, there is a contract, and that contract has been reviewed by city legal.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Donovan.
All right. So any further questions or comments for EEI or Ms. Brown? No? Okay. So I guess at this point, do we want to go ahead with a motion at this point, or do we want to wait until the finance portion of the evening in like 10 minutes? Go ahead, Ms. Ziem.
I make a motion that we approve the contract.
Okay.
Did that.
And Ms. Timmons
I'll-
seconds it. So the
Couldn't
motion,
second? Who seconded?
Ms. Timmons.
Okay.
So go ahead,
I-
Mr. Donovan.
Could I make, I know I'm not a board member, but could I read what I would think would be a good motion, and then you guys could?
Yes, I have one written down as well. But go ahead with your proposal.
Okay, the motion would be the Nashua School District will enter into a lease purchase agreement for energy saving equipment with municipal leasing consultants for up to 20 years for an amount of up to $3,220,000 for Nashua North and $3,364,000 for Nashua South. The maximum rate shall be 3.15%. Annual energy savings will be guaranteed to meet or exceed the annual lease payments by energy efficient investments of Merrimack, New Hampshire.
Well said.
I memorized that.
Very nice. Could you please email that?
I
to-
certainly will.
Thank you to Tara and myself, and we'll make sure that it gets out to where it needs to go. Ms. Ziem, are you accepting that as your motion?
Absolutely.
Ms.
I appreciate
Timmons,
the help.
are you accepting that for your second? I lost Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Okay. So did anyone have any other comments or questions before we take the vote? I don't see any hands. Ms. Oden, I can't see you. Are you all set?
Yeah,
Okay. Mr. Guarino, could you please call the roll on the motion for the lease purchase agreement with EEI?
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes, sorry.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, and also Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. You as well. Stay safe. Okay, that's all I had as far as a presentation for this evening. I did have a request to move the question of grading up to this point in the agenda, as we have both principals here, and I understand they have some feedback for us. Does anyone have any objection to moving the grading question to this point in the agenda? I don't see any hands. Ms. Oden, are you okay with that? I don't hear Ms. Oden saying anything. She's on mute. I said, are you okay with us moving grading to this portion of the evening?
Yes.
Okay, great. So with that, Dr. Mosley or Ms. Fitzpatrick, did you want to begin, or did we want to go directly to Mr. Burns and Mr. Richard? Anyone?
First of all, I can start, and then I think that I think I hope I'll start by saying, if you see me here, I'm just trying to read something off my computer screen and just kind of give a context. I think that when we're talking, there's some things in the district that have always been very, very controversial. Grades, competency-based grading, dress code. We're about to embark on some redistricting. All those things are very controversial. And so when we look at this environment of it, we have to think about it in a context for the best for all students. What was proposed last meeting certainly had some ramifications, and I know the board has received quite a bit of correspondence from parents and students. And so partly what I would say is that however this discussion results in and what the determination is, I would like in the future to talk a little bit about that process of making change. In this case, the process could be and should be that if something is proposed like this should come from the teachers, have internal meetings that work within the buildings, very similar to what happened in our NEAS process for those that were there. And we did receive some positive feedback on our current grading system as well. And from there, it should really go to the entire faculty, where the faculty should have some feedback on that and well. And then during that process, we're refining it. I'm talking specifically about grading, because that's how controversial the grading can be, not just in Nashua, but for all high schools. We are the microcosm of America, and that's something that's great. We've got kids who are going to the military, kids who are going to college, and kids who are going into the workforce. And so following that process, then it makes its way to the curriculum evaluation for more discussion and more feedback, and then the recommendations made to the entire board. So I'd like us to think about that, but that takes some time. I also want to say that in the middle of a pandemic, where we're not able to have those face-to-face conversations with each other, that makes it a little bit more challenging. There's a lot to discuss. I'm hoping that the board will have some reconsideration as we start to embark on this, and not reconsideration in terms of who wins and who loses, but really understanding how complex this is, and we're trying to make this work for all kids. Some of our kids need the grading system because it provides a level of structure and expectation. When we change the grading system the way that we did, it has an effect on kids, not just this 1 year, but 4 years, because 4 years that they've worked hard on their class rank. So there are a variety of factors to consider when you're discussing. Certainly, if there is a motion that's broached this evening, and there's some discussion, we'll certainly weigh in, and so on the principals. If the board has specific questions around a motion or ramification of it, we certainly have the information to help guide a decision that works for all of our kids.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley. I'm glad that Mr. Norris, I see you, but we're going to kind of go in order here. Dr. Mosley, I appreciate that you brought up the communication aspect when speaking of this topic in particular, because there was a real failure of communication here when it is in regards to this topic. The board broached this on April 13th. There was some discussion, there was no resolution, and then communications went out to parents and not copied to the board, suggesting that there was a resolution, when in fact there was not. Then, administration was given advance notice that a motion might come out, and there was no feedback at that point about what that should look like, either prior to the meeting or during that last meeting when a motion was actually made. So there was a lot of opportunities for communication to happen where it didn't, thus leading to a lot of confusion on the part, I think, of parents and of board members who are simply, frankly, trying to do what they feel is best for the kids in our community and for our district. So I think there's a level of frustration on the part of many, many people in the community, including board members, and I'm sure on administration on this topic, but around how does this kind of thing happen? And when we're in a pandemic and the situation has changed slightly, I think that makes having those kinds of conversations and those opportunities to go back and forth even more important. So having said that, I was led to understand that Mr. Richards and Mr. Burns had feedback for us from the motion from last week until now. Is that the case, gentlemen?
No, well, I would just,
No?
I do want to just clarify in terms of communication. Uh, no one spoke to myself or Mr. Burns or any of the administrative team that the board was
I
going to make
did.
a motion. Oh,
I did.
did
I let you know that there would be a motion at about 11 a.m. that morning, as soon as I knew. So, and then no one from admin said at that meeting, hey, we're not ready for this. Can you take some time? So I don't want to get into a back and forth in this meeting because I don't think it's appropriate. Having said that, I don't think it's, I also don't think it's fair to turn around and say to the board, you acted inappropriately when we don't get copied on emails or information that would help us to make our decisions.
Ms. Raymond, could I please make a
Can I-
comment?
Yes, Ms. Oden.
I just finished
Thank you.
when I was talking because I didn't get a chance to finish. And I think this is thank you for that feedback. I think it's in this environment that it's important that we communicate and certainly follow protocols. Part of what the communication came out, whether it was internally or externally, well, when we're talking about grades and we're talking about particularly grades at the high school, we've never had the board come in this level and decide whether there would be direction on grading or not. The situation did broach in terms of grading. You sent me a text message saying that one board member had votes. I don't know what that quite meant, but certainly I think that this should have a public discussion around that. Kind of moving forward here a little bit, and I think it speaks to the level of governance. We need to know where your expectations are in terms of involvement, and we need to know what to tell our public. I don't get involved in grades at the high school. I trust my administrators to do that. And I think, moving forward, I'd like to see those discussions stay at the building level. I think it's concerning that our teachers should be reaching out to their building principals, their department heads, their guidance counselors, having those internal discussions. All that correspondence that does go to the board should be pushed back to our principals who we trust. We got two of the most talented principals here in terms of the high school. They do fabulous job. They're awesome, and I'd like to support them. And if Mr. Burns sends an email out to his faculty, I would never think to send that to the board. I think what's important is that there hasn't been a discussion at the board level around grading, and there was not a determination whether the board was going to change it or not. And the intent of the email from Mr. Burns, not something that I get involved in, is to give his faculty the sense the board has not made a decision yet. So we are going to keep business as usual until a decision is made. And that's the intent of his email. So I hope that, it speaks to, I don't think that in terms of grading and how this works, that should really be at the building level. Mr. Burns and Donna Fitzpatrick and Keith Richards brought prudent information back to this board around how the faculty was split on this on pass fail, and they're going to continue to be split. If I don't, I had, and I'll just say this to my administrators had no voice or no feedback to give to any of the board on the last motion that was broached at it. And so I hope moving forward that we have better understanding in terms of what roles and communication rest at the building level, but also around the governance, because otherwise we're going to continue to have these levels of miscommunication if we don't understand where our principles and roles of responsibility in terms of where they're at, where central office is at, and where the board is at.
All right, one
Yes,
moment.
Raymond?
I have Miss Oden, then I saw Miss Brown, then I saw Miss Timmons, then I saw Miss Johnson. I see Mr. Norris has his hand up as well.
Um, uh, For me, I would just like to remind people these are not normal times. We didn't have a lot of time to work on this. We were getting multiple emails from teachers that were struggling. We had teachers that were teaching a quarter class that didn't know how to grade. They didn't want to fail students because of the remote learning situation. But I want to say I would never have brought that motion forward had I known that the district had sent out an email to all parents and guardians on April 17th saying that the board had voted and that the current grading system would be maintained. And that was in bold print. I would have never brought it forward. I think that's sending a mixed message, but the board was never apprised of that email that went to parents and guardians. Secondly, on April 17th, the same day, we did receive an email along with all the secondary teachers that said, here is the grading scale and what has been decided, I'm sorry. And when you clicked on the middle school, you could see the middle school grading. When you clicked on the high school grading, the teachers couldn't see it. We couldn't see it because it said middle school again. Matter of fact, I clicked on it 3 times. There was nothing about grading on April 17th for the high school, even though that day parents and guardians were told that the traditional grading scale would be kept in place. And my question is, why didn't somebody speak up at that meeting and say, Mrs. Oden, this is a problem because? Does anybody have an answer for me?
I think I'll just speak. I think that there are mechanisms within our schools that allow our teachers to get that level of feedback. We have to have and approach this with a balance. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there were teachers who and again, how does this work in terms of getting that feedback to the board? But you're also cutting out the administrators. You're undercutting them when it's going directly to the board and they don't have an opportunity to address it within their building. In fact, and Mr. Burns and Keith Richards and his leadership team have the answers and the concerns around that. I can speak to it a little bit. I would say that, I'm not here to defend what a principal wrote. What I can say the intent was to give our teachers saying, until we figure this out, until we get direction, until we hear something at the time, the governor to come out, we're going to follow our regular grading pattern. I was not aware, and I speak for me, I was not aware of the nature or the intent or the genesis of the motion that was made until it was made then. I can share with you when we do things like this as an administrative team, particularly at the high school level, I don't make decisions and we don't make decisions without talking to these building principals and the directors. They know what the ramifications are going to be with the slightest change of a grading policy. They know it better than anyone. And so we can do 2 things. We can spend the next 2 hours placing blame and saying who did this, or we move on. We start to do it in a timely manner, and moving forward, we let these issues stay at the building level and follow a process that allows these administrators to do their job and not undercut. Certainly, we have teachers who emailed the board, and there were discussions around testimonies on how teachers are struggling. What I would say is that's one perspective. That's not, we didn't hear from the kids, because when we're talking about grading and talking about, there's always 2 perspectives. The second piece of this is that those perspectives are teachers who are doing a great job and stuff, but you also have to get back to the parents. We also want to make sure that the kids are engaged. And so just moving forward, I want to walk away with, making sure that we support our building principals, we support our kids, but also we got to look at our kids who would benefit from pass failing, but also our kids who really need that grade. They need that structure. They need that class rank. And these kids have worked very hard for that. And it's always that balance. I'm not saying one is right, one is wrong, but I'm just saying that's how complex these high schools are.
Thank
So
you, but
I
you
just-
didn't answer my question. I am not talking about any emails that came from a principal. I'm talking about an email that came from your central office that said that the board had voted and the traditional grading scale was not going to be changed. This isn't anything to do with principal. I just want to know why somebody did not say, Mrs. Oden, we have dealt with that and that has been addressed. A notice has gone out to all parents and guardians of students at the high school. That's what I want to know. Why didn't somebody say that?
I guess my question is, I saw the only email that I saw an email from Nate Burns. I know he did make reference to that. And I say the intent was that, and again, I don't speak for the author of that email. The only thing I can tell you is that the way that we saw it, the way that it was being portrayed, that the board was thinking about taking up the matter of grading, but in the meantime, we were going to follow the traditional grading system that we had in place. That's the best that I can do in terms of answer. And certainly, I'll reread it and we can talk to the author's intent. If the author, who's the person, who we making reference to?
So wait, can I just jump in here? I genuinely believe that any and all emails that have gone out with communications to parents were done in a positive forward-thinking manner. I don't think that I think that an honest mistake was made, and I don't want to belabor that point. I don't think this is an opportunity to say that somebody did something on purpose to like lock us into the corner. I don't think that was the case at all. I think we had a 45-minute conversation, and at the end of it, people walked away with different impressions because it was long and exhausting that evening. So people make honest mistakes. That's not the issue here. The issue is communication. And the issue is a little bit of revisionist history, because if you recall, the board asked for feedback from administration about this issue. We got the feedback and we made a decision on middle school grading. So to then say that it would be strange for us to think about high school grading is really disingenuous. And I don't think anybody here wants to throw an employee on the out there to say that they did something that was inappropriate, because I think I can speak for all of us to say that no one had that impression. I certainly think that the email that I read, it sounded like an honest mistake, and that's totally fine. But because no one said anything to the board about it, we didn't know and we couldn't correct it for the record. And that's very confusing to everybody who got the email. And it puts us all in a very difficult spot when there were opportunities to say something. So I hate to kind of rephrase for you, Dottie, but I kind of think that's what you were getting at.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Yes, I was.
So I had Miss Brown next. Miss Oden, did you finish your comments?
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Miss Brown. And then I saw some other hands waving. I have Miss Brown, Miss Timmons, Mr. Norris, Miss Johnson, Mr. Guarino. Did I miss anyone? Okay, that's my list.
You have paraphrased rather well, Miss Raymond. I think the issue here that we're focusing on is the lack of quality communication between the Board of Education, the district office, and the principals and the schools. The board has not been copied on emails. We're not trying to do your job for you, but we cannot support, defend, or refute any information that you send out if we don't have it. The email that everybody keeps talking about is one that said that we acted on a survey which 80% of the teachers responded to. And it was pretty good information, and we did get a lot of really great information from that. But I feel like the words made the way it was worded really diluted the quality of our conversation that we had before that. And it was infactual because we did not, it was false because we didn't actually vote on anything. There was no vote, no motion, no nothing. But it's neither here nor there what went out. The problem is we've had 4 times in as many weeks that the board has heard about information that the district has disseminated without any notice, or even at the same time. We've actually received it after parents. Again, we're not here to micromanage, especially in this kind of remote environment, but we cannot help you if you don't provide us with information. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm still muted. Okay, I have Ms. Timmons, then Mr. Norris, then Ms. Johnson, then Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for that. But I'd like to move forward with a motion. I'd like to make a motion to restore the original grading system with the caveat that the student can opt into a pass, fail, or audit. The student must notify the teacher on or before May 11, 2020, whether he or she wants to be evaluated under the pass, fail, audit system rather than remain under the traditional grading scale. The current system of class rank and GPA will remain. A pass grade will not factor into a student's GPA or class rank, and a failing grade will be factored into the student's GPA as 0-0 under both systems.
I will second that motion.
Do you wish to speak to your motion, Ms. Timmons?
Yes, thank you. I believe listening to the students, both Stephen and Joshua, they have polar opposite views. And I think this is the only way that we can kind of straighten out everything. We don't want to micromanage, and any other way would be micromanaging, and it will allow everybody to have a say. It's not perfect, but it's close to being the best, in my opinion.
Hold on, I have Mr. Norris, Ms. Johnson, Mr. Guarino, then I see Ms. Giglio, and I think I saw Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson, is that correct?
You already have me down already.
Oh, you're right, I do. You're after Mr. Norris. Okay, who did I miss? Oh, sorry, I see you over there. Okay. Oh, and then Ms. Brown again. Okay. Sorry, Sandra, I see you too. Okay. So, Mr. Norris, then Ms. Johnson.
So I actually prepared a statement to read at my opening comments, and it kind of relates to this. So I was wondering if I could read it now, because I think it would be helpful to hear.
Yes, go for it.
So I agree with what Gloria said. I'll just put that as a prerequisite. So my comments tonight are going to focus on the grading change that was voted on in the special meeting last week, what can be done to fix what was approved, and most importantly, what more can be done to help those students that are struggling in these difficult times. So I know the past week has been somewhat chaotic with the board decisions trickling out to the public, so I hope to clarify the situation. For those that don't know, the 2 student board members were not invited to the meeting where the board voted to change the grading system. Well, this was a simple oversight. It was a very unfortunate one, as the thousands of students we represent count on us to give them a voice at each and every meeting. So I'd like to thank the board for just ensuring that won't happen again. So regarding last week's proceedings, well, I know the board is trying to make a decision in the most timely manner. I think a decision this impactful could and should have been reserved for the official board meeting, where students, parents, teachers, and community members could voice their opinions to a greater extent. Rushing this through during a special meeting was not in anybody's best interest. So I know this was already mentioned, but many people I talked to were under the impression that this policy had already been decided at the last meeting. So despite whether this was true or not, to hear that it was changed at a special meeting took many students, teachers, parents, and members of the public by surprise. They felt that if they had been given more time and information, they could have offered valuable insight to the board. So I have a few comments on the policy itself as well. So I have talked to dozens of parents, teachers, students from both high schools and from all backgrounds. They all have seemed to come to the same consensus that this policy needs to be rescinded or altered to better fit the needs of the whole student body. So if the policy's goal is to help students with failing grades, it falls far short in doing so. In the policy, there's no difference between the grade requirement needed to earn a passing grade compared to the original system. So I just don't know how it can be expected that the number of failing students will decrease. So for the students who are passing, however, the quality of work is surely going to suffer. So I actually explained this policy to a friend last week because he was looking for answers that no one could really give him. So I explained it to him. He's just an average student in extensions classes. And after I described it to him, he said, "So should I just do enough work to get a C minus?" So unfortunately, that is the mindset that many students are approaching this change with. I think it's nice to think that students will learn for the sake of learning, and some of course will, but the reality is that many will now do the absolute minimum. So in the few days leading up to this meeting, I've received over 100 messages from students, parents, and teachers. Well, most of these were from North, some were from South as well. Regardless, all were pleading with me to make their voices heard. So of these 100 messages, all but 2 were in favor of rescinding or amending the policy. So there's also a common misconception going around that the opposition to this policy is only made up of a relatively small group of honors and AP students. However, from my experience, I find that not to be the case. Just yesterday, a high school student started a petition in hopes of getting 100 student signatures. At 2 o'clock today, less than 24 hours after the petition opened, the petition had over 600 student signatures from students attending both high schools. And now I looked at it a little while ago, it's almost up to 700. So the students who are being most hurt by this policy are the thousands of average students who are taking semester and quarter classes. Many of them have worked hard to get the grades they have, and to have them taken away is absolutely devastating. Over the last week, I've come to realize that the most fair option would be to allow each individual student to choose which grading system they prefer for semester 2, letter grades or pass-fail. Student choice is actually the route that many colleges have gone to for this semester. This compromise seems like a viable option to help those students struggling with remote learning and still recognize those that wish to receive a grade. So regardless of which path the board decides to take, grades absolutely need to show up on the transcripts of the students that want them. Grades especially need to show up for full year classes that include more than 6 months of hard pre-pandemic work. In these times where standardized tests are getting pushed back and extracurricular activities are getting canceled, the need for grades are even more important. Our students need to be able to show colleges something. While the audit option for classes might be helpful for some students, what the board passed at the last meeting does not lift up those students that are failing. This should be a primary focus of the board. I also wanted to share a suggestion that was made to me that impacted the end of school date as well as the discussion on the grading change. A teacher actually approached me about this and hoped that I would convey it to the board. So if school were to end on May 29th for most high school students, the time between May 29th and June 15th could be used specifically to work with failing students to provide them personalized help. So this approach would free teachers time up to focus exclusively on struggling students in a very intensive manner and possibly lift many of them out from failing status. So the solution or something like it might be a great option to target the most important problem we as a district are looking to solve. So I'll conclude by saying that as a district, we need to do everything we can to set up all of Nashua's students for future success. I know this was lengthy and I apologize for that, but I feel that my constituents' voices needed to be heard, especially at such an important and divisive time. I know this is not an easy decision, but I trust the board will do everything they can for Nashua students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Hold on, I lost my list. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Norris. I greatly appreciate your comments. It's a good way of looking from the student's point of view, which we don't get to see. I agree. I mean, last week I voted to keep the grading system the way it was because I felt there were students that needed it to go on to college. I also think that students, they get some benefit out of seeing where their grades are, and especially if they've improved versus a pass-fail. We know that there's going to be a lot of students that they're going to really need the help because they are struggling. I mean, I'm doing Zooms and webinars, and I'm not doing very well on it because I'm more of a classroom person. But I just want to address a couple things. You know, we've been talking about lack of communications, but I guess, you know, if teachers had some problems, why didn't they go to their building principals regarding grading system? You know, that was kind of brought up. I'm really concerned about other things. You know, I talked last week regarding about the graduation, which I'm going to bring it up again tonight. And the board needs to know what's going on. It's not that we want to micromanage. It's just that things are said to parents, and when they come back, and I said it last week, and a parent writes, you need to do your job. Well, I can't do my job, or nobody, my other 8 colleagues on this board can't do it either if we don't know what's going on. And it's not a question of micromanaging, it's just getting an idea of where we're going on grading or graduation. So I really want to know. And if people would like the administration, we should send over emails. I mean, I'm going to ask Tara if she could take the whole group of emails that we've had since last week and send it over to the building principals and to yourself, Dr. Mosley, because we've gotten a ton of emails regarding this from when we talked about it in April and we kept the system till last week when everything went crazy, and even till almost up to the meeting tonight. All the people that were concerned and the petition that went through with this whole grading system. So, you know, when people say, you know, we should see it, we're micromanaging, well, I don't care. When we start getting emails, I'm going to send an email to Tara and say to her, take the whole group of emails, send them to you and your administrators, because nobody's seeing them other than the board. If we wanted to go that path, we can go that path. But I think that if we have to work together, then we have to work together as a team, and we need to know what's going on. Because if we don't, then this whole thing is going to fall apart, and it's been such a tough time for all of us. And I know I've just about had it being home. I need to get this fresh air and be out amongst people again. And it is a tough time, and I feel so bad for the students. And we're going to be talking about when school ends and the amount of time that the students have to be in there by state law is either days or hours. And, you know, the state, when I spoke to them, there wasn't any wavering of it. So, you know, there's a lot of important things here right now. And again, if you would like us to see all the emails that we're getting and you think we're micromanaging, so there we go. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Guarino, I have you on the list. You're next. Then Ms. Gilio. I'm sorry, Ms. Ziem and Ms. Brown, and then at some point we ought to vote on Mr. Minz's motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to thank Ms. Oden for bringing this issue to our attention. And I want to thank the other board members for taking action to help those students in need who, because of this remote learning, have been put at a disadvantage. And I voted against pass-fail. And I have been thinking that maybe I wasn't sensitive to the needs of those kids. And it is true that the competition for grades and GPA has made some of us forget what the true meaning of education is about, and that is learning for the sake of enlightenment and growth. It is very difficult to please all. That is why I support a more flexible compromise. Our students ought to be able to choose to opt in on a pass-fail or the traditional grading scheme. Not all of our students will take advantage of this remote learning to game the system to get better grades. Some of our students will rise to the challenge to overcome obstacles that this emergency has created to earn those A's through honest and hard work. And I believe they ought to have the chance to do that and to receive the grades A, B, whatever they honestly earned, and it ought to count towards their GPA. So I think we need a very flexible solution and not worry about any student out there who might be trying to game the system. Their advantage, they only hurt themselves in the long run. These are tough times, and some students have more advantages than others. That's true. But what we have always done as a people, we tough it out. We don't quit. Every teacher in the Nashua district should be commended for the hard work that they're doing under these tough circumstances. And I agree with what they are telling their students. Never quit, no matter what. Keep going. That's what I intend to do. And I hope we all get that message. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. I have Ms. Gilio, Ms. Ziem, Ms. Brown, and then Mr. Gao.
Okay, I agree with a lot of what was said. I do think that the choice should be the students. I lived through a similar experience when I was in college. I was a junior when campuses were shut down suddenly, a few weeks before the end of the school year, and all schools went to pass-fail. This was long before any of you were born. Okay, but I did. Oh, okay, Gloria. All right, you remember. I did realize going forward when I applied to graduate school that there was never a question about why I had one whole term of my one whole semester of college with just pass-fail grades. They just made their evaluation on whether or not to accept me based on the other semesters. But I appreciate Ms. Timmons' motion, but I have there's one part of it that I really think I would like to see be changed. And that is, I would like to see the default be that all students will go to pass-fail, and those students who would like to have their grades count will then have a time frame in which they need to let their teachers know that. I think that a lot of our students I know are working really hard. Our teachers are exhausting themselves. But I do believe that some of our population, for many different reasons, are really struggling. Whether there's family illness, or even though the district has done so much to provide technology for everyone, maybe there's no one at home to help them with that technology, whatever. So I think, and I also think that adolescents, sometimes not the ones you've been talking about, Mr. Norris, but a lot of them don't kind of pay attention to deadlines and, oh, I'm supposed to do this. I have to say, I want this or else this is going to happen. And so I think looking at Ms. Timmons' motion, if it were to be changed that the default would be to pass-fail audit, and that students who wanted their grades to count would then just let their teachers or the guidance people know, or however, I don't know how at the high schools that works, but whatever the best method is. So that's how I feel about this currently. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gilio. Ms. Ziem, Ms. Brown, and then Mr. Gao.
Make this comment correct, because I think it's kind of, you know, I don't want it to be misunderstood, but Mr. Norris was talking about closing earlier, and it is and the overall of this is that these things have happened so fast that communication has been very difficult. So I'm blaming each other. You know, I think that's a waste of time. I think we learn from our mistakes and move forward and blame no one, because I think everybody's intent is good. I just think that we move so fast, and this Zoom stuff has been such a learning curve that I think a lot of stuff has slipped through the holes. And now that we're catching it, it's a little uncomfortable, but we'll get there. And so I just want to say that Mr. Morris made the comment about closing earlier. The teacher had said that she recommended that we closed earlier. It is my understanding that that's a difficult thing, because contractual obligations make altering closing dates earlier expensive. Our contract requirements make us make payments that we don't have money to pay. So I think that if I would love to consider that personally, but I think in order to do that, the union needs to work with administration to see if there's any way we can do it expense wise. And that should be the beginning of our new communications, that then they should come back to us. And if they have a way we can do it, I think it makes sense to do it. But if we can't afford to do it, then why waste our time grieving over spilled milk? And then second, I would like to say that I absolutely agree with the last speaker. And I don't want to mispronounce her name, but I think we should amend the motion that's on the floor to state that the default would be that pass-fail audit would be the I've forgotten. I'm happy for her to make the motion, but I think that's a motion. The amendment should be made to, because I would be very concerned with what is the default. And so this way the default would be written into it and there wouldn't be room for any more miscommunication, because I do absolutely feel that for some of our students, the pass-fail is by far a better solution. And as they've already said, the audit and having the option to choose with the, obviously that does have to be with the approval of whoever their custodian or their guardian is. And so that's in a nutshell, that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Seem. Are you making a motion to amend?
I would love to make it, but I would love for Mrs. Julio, am I pronouncing?
Julio.
Yeah, that's why I don't say her name. I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to be offensive to anybody. But I think her motion was, the amendment was that the pass-fail would be that the default would be that pass-fail audit would be the default. And so
audit. I like
wait, Ms. Timmons, hold on.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Ms. Gilio, did you make that as a motion?
I did not make it as a motion, but I feel very strongly about it, and I certainly could. But I like it's the one part of Ms. Timmons' motion that I feel should be handled differently, just based on my experiences.
So would you like to make that as? Would you like to make a motion to amend, or would you like to wait and see what the vote on Ms. Timmons' motion is, and then decide?
I would like to make a motion to amend that.
Okay.
The rest of her motion is fine. If we could just change it, and I don't remember, I'm sorry, Ms. Timmons, I don't remember your exact wording, but that all students would be given grades that were pass-fail audit for this particular term, half year, whatever, quarter of a year, I guess it is. But those students who want their grades to count, who want them recorded, who want them to be part of their permanent record, just give them enough time for them or their guardians, again, whatever the process is at the high school, to let the people who need to know that they're choosing to get their regular grades and not a pass-fail option.
And Sandra, you're a second on that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then Mr. Burns. Nope. Now you're on mute. You were not. There you go.
Thanks. Sorry. I just want to point one thing out, just in terms of X2 and tracking for teachers and things like that, based on that potential change, is that the default in X2 is that it automatically calculates a traditional grade at the end, and that a teacher would have to override for a pass-fail or audit at the end, no matter what. So it might just be easier, I'm thinking, on teachers in terms of tracking things, to go with the traditional grade as the main basis, and then have people opt in for the pass-fail. Just documentation wise, but I'll leave that up to you to kind of discuss and decide. But I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that X2 can't just calculate a pass fail, that it would have to be that teachers manually change those things based on student preference.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. That's important information.
There's no way to get around that?
Well, they can type it in.
Oh.
So, and then I have Ms. Brown and Mr. Gao.
Thank you very much. All right, so in regards to that last comment, I think it's absolutely necessary that we keep the motion on the floor to amend to make nobody gets to opt out. The default is having the pass fail as your general thing. You have to opt back in. I would I actually have a statement that I'd like to go with, but I would like to add a further amendment to the wording on Ms. Timmons' motion. Should I do that now?
Sure. It can get
All right.
cumbersome though.
I would like to, that's okay. We can vote for one, then vote for another, but I think it's right to get the wording right if this goes through. I move that all classes on a student's schedule that chooses to opt in to regular grades are included for regular grades rather than specified classes. This means that if you have 4 classes, you can't just choose your 2 weighted classes or your 1 weighted class. You either get all your classes opt in or all your classes opt out. You can't pick and choose.
I like that.
Is that clear?
Yeah.
May I have a second?
Oh, I'll second that. Sure. Okay.
And then may I
Ms. John, hold on one second. Ms. Johnson, I see you. I've added you after Mr. Gao. Sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Brown.
So
You
thank you
too.
for
Ray.
allowing me to further modify that motion.
See you, Ray.
And now I will thank you all to be a little bit patient with me because I have been thinking about this a lot this week. Last week, Ms. Oden beautifully crafted a motion to move to pass-fail with the intent of not harpooning student GPAs of good kids who don't have decent access or their own computer, trying to protect over half of our high school students to complete their grade and their classwork that has already been cut in half, but they still aren't able to become competent and fully proficient in the work they're doing. We're trying to eliminate the temptation driving advantaged students to hack into other kids' accounts and check what they got in assignments, or to turn in work that's not authentically theirs. It's not always right to do what's popular, and it's not always popular to do what's right. We had to make a difficult decision based on a survey which 80% of high school teachers responded to. That's a pretty good response rate. The survey came back almost statistically split at 50.4% to 49.6%. It doesn't get much closer. And furthermore, some teachers were on the side of keeping traditional grading added on subjectively, that they would, if we did not return to school by May 4th, they would be open to the pass-fail system as well, which is why we didn't vote on it the first time we discussed it. Last week, we made the right decision. And after reading all the community emails that came in this week, I am even more affirmed as such. The dozens of emails we've gotten from negative feedback were emails from parents and students with one common theme: GPA and class rank. Honestly, every single one. Every single email is a tale about an unfair advantage for higher class rank students who had weighted classes in the first semester, how this board has in one callous, careless motion undone every single bit of hard work they've ever done for the last 13 years of their life. The things that their parents have worked for, their class rank and GPA is all that matters. The number that could come down to 1/100th of a point separating them from their peers. Those emails talked about their self-worth and their drive is gone, and now they will never get into a good college. They may as well give up. There's no reason to put in any more effort for this school year or next. It broke my heart to see these kids that were clearly exhibiting symptoms of stress going to these extremes, and then families feeding into it. And these are the kids that are surviving. What are we doing to the kids that aren't? Bottom line, the adults broke this system, and I'm sorry for what we've done to you. The same good parents who advocate for anti-bullying policy and choose kindness, the same good parents that spend their paychecks on sending their kids to sports and music and dance and theater, but still keep the family balance. The same good parents who are trying to raise a body positive generation and not have you put your self-worth based on a number on a scale. The same good parents who are turning around, and we made our kids believe that a number that divides them by less than 1 is what determines the quality of their high school education and the culmination of all their efforts. Now, we made them believe that they have to be better than perfect. They need a 5.0 on a 4-point scale. Honestly, before I ran for the Board of Education, I knew that this was on my radar, but it was kind of in the background. I was like, yeah, class rank's a discussion. And quite honestly, I'm a pretty intensely competitive person. I coach biddy basketball. I've coach youth cross country. I do boot camp CrossFit style classes and run triathlons. I can get pretty intense. And honestly, I was vacillating on a strong position either way on whether competency based grading, weighted scales, diving into class rank discussions. I figured we'd get there when we get there. And basically, this blew the doors off my opinion, especially when we got more anxiety ridden emails from these families. And every single one was down to class rank. Now we talk about the equity and privilege issues that kids that normally in a classroom are having access to teachers hands-on who can reach out and help them. They have the opportunity to work with other students, even when at home they might have a disadvantaged environment. We're stealing that away from them in remote learning. And we're also asking teachers to lower their workload and not provide the same amount of the same volume of work as we were before. The one thing, sorry, I need to get back on track here. So anyway, bottom line was I was feeling awful because I have this whole group of kids that are now convinced that I personally and this board has ruined their entire life. So I started doing a ton of research saying, all right, how can I compromise? What can I do? And so this is what I did. I spent my entire vacation week doing research. So I'm going to start reading a bunch of stuff. Due to a combination of weighted grade scales, high school block scheduling, and our strongest academic students are dropping out of music, art, and other electives, often at their parents' demands. They try to stack their schedule with as many 5.0 weighted classes as possible, and when class registration opens, they flock to sign up for AP classes that have a reputation for being easier or those taught by the easy instructor. This often leads to a secondary problem of unbalanced teacher-student ratios within departments, of one class having 30 kids and another having 10. Students are taking advanced placement subjects motivated by a 5.0 value in their class rank and then blowing off their AP exams, undermining the intent of what advanced placement is for, which is intended to provide college credit towards your first-year classes. Some students are so concerned with how they compare to other classmates that they're hacking into one another's X2 accounts to see how their friends scored on the exams and calculating their GPAs to see how they measure up. Student character is compromised by class rank and weighted classes. Students now put class rank above studying subjects that bring them joy or trying new things outside their comfort zone that might possibly lower their GPA. Well, now it's pretty clear that I've made the social emotional case for discrediting class rank and the desperation seen in these emails, especially when we're looking at whole-centered education in the times of COVID-19 and remote learning. But there's a lot of parents out there that say, oh, she doesn't have kids close to college age. She just doesn't know. She doesn't have any idea. So I did even more research. Turns out that only 1/3 of high schools still nationally use class rank at universities. That number's skewed even further by the state of Texas, which requires class ranking by law because any student in the top 10% is offered automatic acceptance to state universities. The majority of private high schools have eliminated announcing class rank beyond valedictorian and salutatorian status. Why is that relevant? Because private schools have an overall collegiate acceptance rate higher than public schools. Without weighted scales, we could even have a 10% a person outside the 10% top class rank, and even with a 4.0. Let's see. It's not as valuable on your college transcripts as you think it might be. Since there are fewer and fewer high schools reporting class rank, it skews the data that weighted scores. Most elite colleges retally your GPA on a flat scale against other applicants to their university, not your own class rank. I could go on with pages and pages of information, but I think today was the most powerful article I read, which is that the most elite level universities in our region and internationally known have switched to a no option pass fail or no opt out option for pass fail, including Yale, Stanford, Harvard, Wellesley, Dartmouth, Columbia. There's about 140 other pass fail institutions in the country, and this was all led by MIT, citing issues of equitability and access within our education system. We're expecting our high school kids to overcome challenges that top level university students are not expected to reach. Thank you. I appreciate your patience. I think that we made the right decision last week, a hard decision, and I hope that we will keep it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. I put it in the chat, but I have Mr. Gao next, Ms. Johnson, Mr. Guarino, and Mr. Norris. I know a couple of you have been waiting a little bit. I'm going to ask that we each limit ourselves to 2 times on a topic, or else this meeting is going to last all night. So, Mr. Gao, Ms. Johnson, Mr. Guarino, and then Mr. Norris.
Awesome. Thank you, Madam President. And also thank you, Ms. Brown, for sharing what you said about just like the reactions of the students. It is really saddening to hear that grades mean so much, where it's really we're in school to learn for our futures, like to build up our futures. And I just wanted to speak on Ms. Timmons's motion. I do think Stephen and I are a perfect example for some of the views in the district. I've received a lot of information saying that we want pass fail. So I think because there's these like 50-50 support for both sides, I do think that giving students an option is a good idea. However, with Ms. Timmons's motion, I do have a concern on how students are represented in front of colleges. What I mean by this is, for example, if I was a college admissions counselor and I see a class of students all having, for example, like A's or B's, and then I see students with passes on their transcript, that leads me to think that they're trying to hide up a grade, like a C or a lower grade. So by giving students this choice, on the surface, we're giving them a choice, but really, if we look at this a bit deeper, do you really have the choice to choose pass fail when you feel strained or stressed? Because if you choose that pass fail, then colleges may equate that to lower grades. So I do think that potentially grouping students up in this decision, for example, choosing pass or fail at the class level. This way, if the class feels that they weren't able to learn adequately under the environments, the entire class can choose pass fail. This way, no student will be singled out and no student would be expected to have a lower grade than they actually do. So I would just like to propose that as a potential amendment to the motion, which I really do think is necessary in truly making it an option for students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gao. Of course, only board members, adult board members, are able to propose amendments, but if any of the other board members feel that they would like to take up Mr. Gao's suggestion, please raise your hand and I will call on you.
But just to clarify, we get 2 amendments on the floor right now. I'm just checking.
Yes, so thank you for checking in. Currently, we have Miss Timmons's motion, which was a move. Her motion was to restore the original grading system. I'm paraphrasing, with an opt-in for pass-fail audit by 511, keeping rank and GPA.
That's quite right. Okay, can
No.
I repeat it?
Yes.
The motion was to restore the original grading system with the caveat that a student can opt into a pass, fail, or audit. The
Yes.
student must notify the teacher on or before May 11, 2020, whether he or she want to be evaluated under the pass, fail, audit system rather than remain under the traditional grading scale. The current system of class rank and GPA will remain. A pass grade will not factor into a student's GPA or class rank, and a failing grade will be factored into the student's GPA as 0, 0 under both systems. That's the original motion.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. And then Ms. Giglio made an amendment where she wants, instead of restoring the original grading system, she would like to amend the motion to say that we will have a default pass-fail audit system, and the opt-in will be for letter grades. And then we had a second amendment by Ms. Brown, and I did not write down who seconded it.
Ms.
That
Zing.
Ms. Ziem seconded it.
No,
Thank
she-
you. No? Yes? Yes. That all courses, I'm sorry, that if you opt in for grades, all the classes will be grades. You can't mix them up half and half. And I think that's where we're at right now. We voted on nothing. Okay. And Ms. Johnson has been waiting so patiently.
That's okay. I don't know if patient is my best virtue, but it is tonight. Okay, I just want to say that, Mr. Burns, that the traditional grading system, that's what's in place right now. And I just want to make sure I'm correct. And if they wanted to, they can opt, if they didn't want the traditional grading system, they can opt into pass, fail, audit. Am I correct? I just want to make sure I'm correct what Mr. Burns said before I continue.
So in X2, at the end of a semester or grade, X2 does calculations to determine an overall grade for a student. So X2 can't determine whether it's a pass or fail. That would be something that would have to be inputted by the teacher as an override, versus what typically happens is it'll calculate for a B or a C or an A. So that was what my point was that I was trying to convey.
Okay, thank you. You know, I'm listening to everybody's motions. And I know last week when I voted the way I did, I know that I did the right thing because it's not the pass, fail, or audit. And when we talk about kids with equity, nobody's ever equal in life. No matter how you do it, nobody's ever equal because we can't, it's just the way of life. But when I listen to this, I have to say to myself that, you know, kids work so hard in their life, whether we like what the parents do or not. That's not my business what the parents do. I know what I did for my 3 kids to get them through school and for them to be successful in life. And I'm very happy that my kids are all successful in life. These kids worked hard enough. And why shouldn't they be able to get the grades that they're entitled to? They worked hard, they're entitled to these grades. Kids that don't work hard aren't entitled to those grades. They're going to get the grades that they worked for. Yes, there's a lot of kids that are failing out there. And yes, we have to pick them up and we need to give them support. There's no 2 ways about this. It's been a very tough year from March on. But I'm trying to get the rationale between all these different motions here. The motion should be, with Ms. Timmons basically just about hit on it. The grading system will remain the same unless they opt out for the pass, fail, and a deadline. End of story. And there shouldn't be anything more. I mean, and if people don't like it, you know what? We're going to get tons more emails. These kids worked for this. And I'm not going to be the one that takes away what they've done in 13 years of their life and how hard they worked for this. And it's a shame that we're sitting here again arguing about this and going round and round and round and round about this pass-fail system. And if my child was in school and worked so hard for those grades and someone told me, no, your child's got to have a pass-fail, whether the colleges or whatever the colleges are accepting at this point in time, they worked for it. Give them the credit for what they've done. pat them on the back and say to them, you've done a great job. And the ones that haven't done a great job, not because of their own fault, because they're struggling, we're going to help them. But again, we're changing things on a time when it's so stressful. Keep these kids and give them the placement that they deserve. And I'm going to mend the emotion. And I'm going to make it simpler, I guess, here, Ms. Timmons, that we keep the grading system in place that we have right now. And the students can opt out for pass, fail, or audit by, what is the date?
May
May 11th. End of story. Let's make it simple so everybody understands this. And let's give these kids the credit that they deserve. And let's help the kids that are struggling. Thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Johnson has just proposed a third amendment to eliminate the last sentence of Ms. Timmons's original original motion, which said that the rank and GPA system would remain the same.
It's basically what I'm saying. Is that okay? That basically it's the same thing that Joe was saying, Ms. Timmons, or do you want that, leave it the way
No,
yours is?
I thought that the original motion was perfect.
Okay.
And regardless of what other people think about the motion, to water it down is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But to make a motion to restore the original grading system and give them the option to pass, fail, or audit. And then the original motion, the student must notify the teacher on or before May 11, 2020, whether he or she want to be evaluated under the pass, fail, audit system rather than remain under the traditional grading scale. The current system of class rank and GPA will remain the same.
That's fine.
The pass grade will not factor into students' GPA or class rank, and a failing grade will be factored into the GPA as 0 under both systems. And to water it down, I think is, in my opinion, absurd. It's
Okay.
straightforward and that's it.
And
But,
again, give these kids their due honor that it's been a horrible year. They're going to graduate, even the juniors, but these kids that are going to graduate this year, you know, it's just a mess. And I think that we need to respect what hard work that they've done, and we shouldn't take this away from them.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I crossed out your amendment because it sounds like you and Ms. Timmons are in agreement. So next I have Mr. Guarino and then Mr. Norris. And just Mr. Guarino, just to note, this will be the second time for Ms. Johnson, the second time for you, and the second time for Mr. Norris on this topic.
Thank you, Madam President. I am looking at this motion and I'm looking at the amendments from the perspective of a lifelong bureaucrat. And I see a lot of work that we are creating for teachers. And I believe that this board should look at this issue from the point of view, keep it simple. And Mr. Burns has told us that our grading system gives the traditional grade. That's what it calculates. And the way that Ms. Timmons's motion is written is that it gives the option of pass fail, but the teachers have to go in and change it. And I think that's her motion makes it the easiest for the teachers to do the grading, to change the grading for kids who will request that. And then to those amendments, I think, complicate matters, both of those amendments. And I appreciate from where they're coming from, and that the board members who made those motions want to ensure that students have that option for pass fail. But I think we ought to strike down both amendments, and just that's the simplest way to do it. From the point of view of a bureaucrat, we're making a bureaucratic mess. We need to keep it simple. Okay, we have the pass fail. I mean, we have the traditional grading system. That's how grades are calculated. We give students the option to go to their teacher on each course to say, I want pass fail. The teacher can go in there and change it, and everybody can get what they want. Now, I just want to say one more thing. I don't want to belabor it, but I realize the intensive competition can cause a lot of stress, a lot of problems. I understand that, and I think Ms. Brown makes a a very good argument, but what do you do when your child comes to you and says, life is hard? Life is hard. You know, there is a such thing as healthy competition. Okay, competition and tough times, they make or break kids' characters. They develop. Our children are growing and developing, and they're learning to become adults. And not that we're going to stress them out with competition or do them harm, but competition can also be healthy, and it can allow our children to grow. And yes, some kids will game the system, but there are a lot of kids out there who are Boy Scouts. They or if they're girls, they're Girl Scouts, and they go by the rules and they work hard. They deserve those accolades. They work for A's, B's, and C's, and they deserve those GPAs, and they ought to be standouts. And if it comes between them getting into a good college, and it's all pass fail, maybe they'll be looked over if they have a better GPA and a better rank. They deserve that. Not all of our kids are going to game the system. They work hard, and they deserve those A, B's, and C's. And those other kids that don't have the advantages, and the kids, they will have that pass fail option. Okay, and they can request it if it's gotten too hard for them and they have the disadvantage, and we want to give them that option, they'll have it. So I think we ought to strike down the amendments and just go with the original motion as Ms. Timmons has proposed. That's the way I'm going to go, and I won't talk anymore. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Guarino. I'm going to skip, and Ms. Fitzpatrick has something, and then Mr. Gao, and then Ms. Bishop. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. I'm sorry, I got my order bit mixed up. Ms. Fitzpatrick, then Mr. Norris, then Ms. Bishop, then Mr. Gao. I write it down for a reason, and then I try and look up, and I don't pay attention. Okay.
I just wanted to speak to Ms. Brown's point about class rank, because I think it was before you joined the board, but the board did task us with having a committee to look at class rank and GPA and how that's done. As a matter of fact, Josh and I have worked together on that committee. And we have, obviously COVID-19 interrupted our process, but we had already met several times. We have representatives from local colleges, guidance counselors, parents, and students, frankly, on both sides of the issue. And it's going to be a long process, but I think that Josh will agree with me. The one thing the entire committee agreed on, whether we were for or against class rank and GPA, was that we would never start it just out of nowhere in the middle of something because of the impact it would have on students. The committee agreed that it would be something where we would grandfather, if we went to getting rid of class rank and GPA, that we would do it in a gradual process where the kids that were already under the current system would be grandfathered in, and then as incoming freshmen came in, that we would do it that way so that it does not have a negative impact on the kids that are very interested in class rank and GPA. So I don't want people to think that we're not aware of the concerns around class rank and GPA, and we do have a committee and we have been working. COVID-19 obviously interrupted that work, but when we last left, Josh, myself, and another student, along with Lisa Gingras, had developed surveys for parents, surveys for teachers, surveys for students. All of those different stakeholders are being asked about this very issue, and a lot of research has been done by different people in that group. So I just want to acknowledge that there is a group of people that are working very hard on making an informed and educated decision about class rank and GPA for the Nashua school districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fitzpatrick. Just to clarify for everyone, all of the discussion this evening regarding class rank and GPA is not to abolish it forever. I don't even know if there was an amendment to say to get rid of it forever, but it was specifically for this semester, correct?
Right. And I'm sorry,
Okay.
my point was, in keeping with what Mr. Greeno said, is that to do this suddenly to students who are very invested in this process is unfair. And I think that that's something that Stephen spoke to.
Right.
And so my point is, if we were going to, in the long term, address this issue, there's a gradual way to do it that does not impact students like it would if we suddenly say, we're not going to worry about it this semester.
Okay. And just for my clarity, for my own understanding, Ms. Timmons, your original motion regarding the opt-in for pass-fail and then all of the amendments thereof was regarding during this time of crisis, correct? While we are doing remote learning, it is not intended to continue beyond this semester.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And that really wasn't my point. I was just trying to.
No, I'm sorry, Ms. Fitzpatrick. You
Okay,
made me
all right.
think,
Okay.
and then I wanted to make sure that we had clarity before we got to a point of voting.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Norris?
Thank you, Madam President. So I just trying to wrap my head around all of these different comments. So first, I'd like to point, I haven't heard of any cases of hacking or excessive cheating going around. I don't know if that's just my classes or North itself, but I know I've heard people talking about this, and it honestly surprises me so much. And they're talking about AP classes, and I know I'm in some AP classes, and I haven't heard of any of this going on. But I don't know. That doesn't mean it's not going on in either school, but I just haven't heard it. And also, we've been talking about class rank over and over. I don't think class rank is the issue here. That obviously we know that class rank really doesn't play a large piece into whether you get into college or not. The true issue here is that we need to have grades on transcripts. I know when I was emailing members of the board, they stressed that colleges recalculate GPAs when you're applying to college, but there's no way they can recalculate GPAs if you don't have grades on your transcript. So, well, GPA and class rank are important. They're far, far less important than having your grades on your transcripts. And also, I'd like to say that I've actually, people CC'd me on many of the emails that they sent to the board, and I can attest that many of the ones that were sent to me were almost exclusively about including grades on your transcript, and it had nothing to do with class rank, because I think everybody understands that there's bigger fish to fry than class rank. And just to end, I know it's pointed out that hundreds of colleges are changing to a pass-fail system without giving students an option, but I think it's also relevant to say that hundreds of other colleges are also giving their students an option. So it's not just one way or the other, and we can't blanket all of our students. And I think a compromise is the best option. I think either way we go with any of these amendments kind of makes this better than how it is right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Ms. Bishop, you have been waiting quite some time.
Yep, that's fine, because gave me an opportunity to think. I want to say I've been dying to have this meeting because I wanted to hear what everybody had to say about this. Certainly my experience, my family experience is not the same as everybody else's. It should not be what I hold everybody else up to. So I'm excited to hear what everybody has had to say. I want to remind everybody that in Ms. Oden's original motion was that grades could go on transcripts. X2 is already set up for the grades to be there. It would be the manual change to switch it over to pass-fail. I think if they're already there, if people want them on the transcripts, they should be able to go on. I have a couple of points because I've been listening a long time. To mirror what Ms. Raymond was saying, is we're not talking about rank and GPA forever. This is a moment in time. This, for some people, is the most crisis-filled, grief-filled mourning time that they have experienced. I think we need to respect that. I think we need to put some weight to it. I think people do come to the table with lots of different circumstances and resiliency. And I think it's challenging to put everybody into a bin. However, well, in a bin, as in lump them all together. I do think making your own decision is important regarding your grades. However, I think it's challenging for people to have the kind of insight that is needed as a freshman, a sophomore. I think people who are looking at colleges in their junior and senior year probably have a little bit more insight. I think parenting, Miss Johnson said it perfectly. It's not up to us to decide what parents are going to do. Families are their own units. We are raising our own children with our own morals and values and expectations. And I know I said not to hold my family up to a standard to everybody else, but the middle school has gone to pass fail. I still demand the best from my kids. I don't care that it's pass fail. I want her to do her best, and I want her to learn for the experience of learning. And I think if we went to a full pass fail, this is my opinion, if we went to a full pass fail without the option, but you can include grades on your transcripts, I think that eliminates a lot of the personal and subjectivity and objectivity that we're putting on other people. I think if we make it a flat, this is a crisis, this is a moment in time, this is the worst case scenario for a lot of people. Flat, pass, fail, grades on your transcripts. And I really want the students to know that right now it is perfectly fine to do your minimum. Sometimes that is the hardest thing to do, is get to that level. I think we need to understand and respect that perfect is not always necessary, but if your family wants you to strive for that, that is up to your family to decide. I think as a school district, it's important for us to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to succeed. If kids are going to fail, they are going to fail without a pass-fail system anyway. We are lowering the standard to fail in the first place by 4 points. We are opening up opportunities for kids to explore the many other things that are happening right now, the existential crises that kids are now facing who've never had to deal with death before. The fact that, grandparents in nursing homes could fall into this at any moment. Kids are dealing with things that they have never thought of before. We need to give them the space and the opportunity to focus on that, because that is what's going to build their character. That is what's going to shape their morals. That is going to be the guiding compass and the people that they become. We need to take the grades out of it as an expectation. We need to make sure that they have a wide breadth of space to explore what's going on safely and not have to worry about grades. So I love Ms. Timmons' motion. I love the fact that we have all worked so hard at coming up with this. We have lost sleep over this. We have talked to people. We have responded to emails. This has been in the forefront of all of our minds. And I think it's great that we have different heads coming together on this because it's important. But I'm not going to be supporting the option of going into grades because I don't think that it is a not necessary, I misspoke. I think that it is, it's too much to put that right now. But I fully support grading grades on the transcripts. I understand how important that is. And I encourage families to reach out to guidance counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, to really explore their emotional response to what's going on. I just think this is a bigger picture than grades and class rank and GPA right now. But thank you so much for bringing all of this to our attention. This is the emails, the responses, the meetings. It's just great to hear everybody articulating what they feel. And I think everybody has the kids and the students' best interests in the forefront. I think we've done a great job at accommodating the teachers and what we expect from them. I think we should do the same thing for the students. That's hopefully all I have to say. But I also want to let our administration know and our teachers know that we do value and want to hear your input and your opinion. and it is an invaluable resource for me to hear your opinions. We have gotten several emails on both sides. Where people are coming from is important. I know we're getting a lot of emails, but please keep them coming. That's the only way that we can get a pulse on what's happening. And I appreciate all of the hard work that the teachers have been doing, the administration has been doing, the amount of re-choreographing everything in order to make either one of these decisions happen is going to, it's a feat. And not just the students and not just the teachers are going through this crisis, but our administration is too. This is not an easy time for anybody. I think we should all cut each other some slack. I think we should be kind. I think we should be focusing on how to build resiliency. All of these kids are going to be 50 one day. They're going to look back on this moment and say, this is not what I remember from my last semester of senior year was not the fact that I aced everything from home, but I got to spend time with my family. We avoided being sick, hopefully. And now I'm able to take the wisdom from that moment in time, like Ms. Giglio did, and bring it into their future. So it's just a bigger picture. I want us to go pass fail without an option, but grading on the transcripts. And I'm so sorry, Ms. Timmons, but I will not be voting yes on your motion.
So
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bishop and Mr. Gao. Wait, where did you go, Mr. Gao? Oh, there you are. Okay, you're still here. Good, excellent. It's your turn.
Thank you. So here's the thing. If we're giving the option to have a grade or have pass fail for the students, I think both need to be legitimate options for students. If students choose the grade, we need to ensure that they truly represent the performance of the student. And here I want to emphasize what Ms. Brown said about if we have pass fail, we need to make all classes pass fail. I know as an AP student, what I would do is automatically make my honors classes all pass fail, make my AP classes all grades, and that automatically boosts my grade up. It inflates it a lot, and it automatically puts me in a place better than my peers. And I think it's something that we really need to consider because that's not fair at all. And I want to reemphasize what I said earlier. If students choose the pass-fail option, it needs to truly relieve stress and truly act as an equalizer. If we give this option individually to choose pass-fail or to choose your grades, pass-fail can be easily interpreted as a C, or the poor grade that students may try to need to have the pass-fail replaced. So what I'm saying is, I think we do need to reconsider Ms. Brown's amendment, and also truly consider what I said earlier about having the entire class vote for whether we choose pass-fail or keep this grading system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gao. I think it was Dr. Mosley's finger I saw. Yes, Dr. Mosley.
First
And
of all,
then, okay, go ahead.
Okay, no. Were you gonna?
No, I was going to say Dr. Mosley, and then Ms. Johnson had her hand up, but I was asking people to limit themselves to speaking twice, and I have Ms. Johnson as speaking twice. So unless it's something dire, I would ask that you hold it.
I would like to echo Ms. Bishop's words that part of this is that I think that we have to realize that this is unprecedented times, and that the fact that our community is dealing with this COVID-19. What is not being said and what's not is that the people you see in this arena, in faculty, and I'm sure yourself, they're also dealing with loved ones who are dealing with COVID-19. And not just dealing with it, but we've also had on my administrative team 2 people who have dealt with deaths, and they're dealing with deaths in a way that that's unimaginable, that they can't go and see their own families and be with them to comfort them. And I think to Miss Bishop's point, that the air of compassion is something that we have to keep in mind. And I really appreciate those words. With that said, I won't say too much. Ms. Timmons' motion is something that I support. I'd even go so far to say the experts and Nate Burns and Keith Richards supported as well. And it's not perfect, but I think it keeps us going. And then we have to think about the next steps and the next things that are going on in the agenda. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mosley. Does anyone else have anything that they need before we start looking at the motions. Ms. Timmons?
I'd like to put a conversation and vote on the motion.
Okay, do we need to call the question or can we just have consensus to go ahead and vote?
I think we ought to vote on the amendments
wanna
first
vote
and
on
then the motion.
Yes, you have to vote on the amendments first and then the motion, but I thought Ms. Timmons just asked to call the question.
Yes.
Oh, you want to,
And it seems silly to have a vote on call the question and
Right,
then
right,
vote on the vote
right.
if we don't have to.
Right.
So are there any objections to going ahead and starting our voting? I don't see any hands. And in fact, I see people shaking their head that they don't have an objection. So having said that, our first vote is on the amendment regarding grades, that whether you opt in or out, everything has to be either grades, all of your classes are grades and all of your classes are pass fail. You can't split them. Correct?
Yes.
Yes. And how exactly did you word that, Ms. Brown?
I don't know exactly. I believe I said that, yes, if a student chooses to opt into or out of the pass-fail system, all of their classes on their schedule must be included in whatever system they choose. You may not choose half and half or one portion of your classes to be graded, another portion not. All will be factored into your GPA.
Okay. So that's what we're voting on right now. A yes means you agree with Ms. Brown's motion. A no means that you do not. All right, Mr. Guarino.
Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Johnson,
No.
Ms. Ziem,
Ms. Ziem is saying yes, but she's very quiet.
okay, that's a yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, there we go. Got you that time.
yes, okay. Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
No.
The amendment carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yeses, 3 nos.
Okay. So however we go, we have agreed that whatever we pick, if it's an opt-in for grades or if it's an opt-in for a pass-fail, students must have their entire course load be one or the other. So the second amendment or the first amendment was to change the motion from restore the original grading system to say that it would default to pass-fail. So the original motion was to restore grading and opt into pass-fail. This amendment is to reverse it. Am I wrong, Ms. Ziem?
Didn't it have audit on it, pass-fail audit?
Yes, you are correct. So
Thank you.
this amendment would reverse it and say the grading system will default to pass-fail audit with an opt-in to grading. Yes, Ms. Johnson.
Whose amendment is this one?
I have this.
Ms. Gilio.
Thank you,
Oh,
Ms.
okay.
Gilio.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So a yes on this amendment would say that you want to default pass-fail audit. A no means that you want default letter grades. Does everyone feel that they have understanding and are ready to vote? Ms. Brown, you're on mute, but I
I'm
see
sorry,
you.
can you just say what yes and no mean one more time? I apologize. Yes is,
No.
oh,
Okay. So yes means that you want it to default to pass-fail audit. No on the amendment means that you want it to default to letter grades. Does that make sense? And then the
As
opt-in
the
would be the
original,
opposite.
as the original motion was, yeah.
Yes. Ooh, this is fun. Sorry. Peanut gallery comment. Okay, Mr. Guarino, when you're ready.
On the amendment, Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Johnson,
No.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yeah.
Ms. Timmons.
No.
There are 6 yeses and 3 nos. The yeses have it, the amendment passes.
Okay. means now that the motion, as we combine these amendments, motion is now to default to a pass-fail audit system for this semester, so semester 2. Yes?
Yes.
Semester 2, students, I'm trying to get the wording from the original. Students may, what was it? How did you say it, Ms. Timmons? Students must,
notify the teacher on or before May 11, 2020, whether he or she want to be evaluated under the pass-fail audit system rather than remain under the traditional grading scale.
Right.
So you're gonna have to reverse those, I guess.
She
So-
did when she said it out loud. Yes? Yeah. Okay. So they must notify their teachers by 5/11. And then we have to add in if they, whichever option they choose, they must choose for all of their classes.
I guess that's what you had.
Right.
Yeah.
That was amended on the.
That's the second amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last sentence, right.
And then I would say the last sentence would be, because we never had an amendment, so the last sentence is still the current system of rank, class rank, and GPA will remain.
Correct. That's part of the motion, right?
Yep.
Are you ready for the vote?
Does everyone feel confident that they understand and that I have rephrased it?
Could you
Yes.
reread the motion, please?
You have it, Ray?
Yeah, the motion is to have a pass-fail audit grading system with the caveat that a student can opt into the traditional grading scale by May 11th. The current system of class rank and GPA will remain. A pass grade will not factor into a student's GPA or class rank, and a failing grade will be factored under the student's GPA as 0/0 under both systems. And a student, if they decide to opt into pass, fail, or grading, that will be for all of their classes for that period.
Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to speak on the motion. You know what? I'm sitting here listening to this whole thing all night long. And if a parent understands what this motion is all about, my hat's off to them, because we've just taken what should have been and we've just added little bits and pieces into it. And instead of it being what it should be, it's all mishmash. I'm not going to be supporting this because you know what? I think what's going to happen, the administrators are going to be all confused with this. And I don't think that this is a good motion. It should have just been the traditional grading with the X2 to stay in it or opt out into the pass-fail, simple, easy language. This is so complicated now that, you know what, if I was a parent, I'd be texting right now or emailing and saying, what the heck did you guys do? You just took too much, you put too much into it. And you know what? My hat's off to the administrators because I'm sure it's going to pass. And it's a nightmare of what was put into a motion. So I'm not going to support this. I'm just not. I think it should just be the X2, the traditional grading with the opt-in to the pass, fail, or audit. Simple language, simple for everybody to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Okay. We've already spoken on this like for an hour. So I'm going to ask an hour and a half. I'm going to ask that we go ahead and take the vote. Most people have spoken, many people have spoken twice, except for Ms. Bishop. Go ahead, Ms. Bishop, you have not spoken twice, but quickly.
So I just want to highlight, I know we've been talking about this for an hour and a half. However, this is a very important decision. I think it's something that we need to speak of exhaustively, if that's a real word. And I don't mind hashing it out until we get it right. This is This is thousands of kids' futures that we're talking about. And it's not something that we should tie up in a nice bow as fast as we can. It's going to get dirty. It's going to get messy. We need to make the right decision and we need to be able to think about it properly. So I'm okay for the long haul. So I don't think we should dismiss this as fast as we would like to. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bishop. Okay, so on the motion, do we all understand the motion? No one's saying they don't understand the motion. So, Mr. Guarino, could you please call the roll?
On the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
No.
Ms. Ziem? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Ziem is yes. Ms. Bishop,
No.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond? Ms. Raymond?
Can you come back to me?
Okay. Ms. Brown,
No.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
No.
No. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses, 4 noes. The motion carries.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Now, sorry, bear with me. I have to find my, go back. Okay, now we can move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything that they would like to remove from the consent agenda? I'm hearing nothing. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent.
So approved.
So moved by Ms. Timmons, seconded by Ms. Ziem. I'm sorry, there's some background noise. Mr. Guarino, can you call the roll on the motion to approve the consent agenda?
Sure. On the consent agenda, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem? Is that a
Ms.
yes?
Ziem, I think you're on mute again.
Yep. Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yeah.
Motion carries.
Okay. We have no items removed from the consent agenda. Does anyone have communications outside the consent agenda?
I somehow fucked up over here.
Okay, nope, but I am hearing something in the background with some inappropriate language. So just keep an eye on that. Dr. Mosley? Superintendent's comments?
I just will be brief. The leadership team did a wonderful eye on education with Ed Lecious, and we talked about some things going on around the district and distance learning. We also we did a press conference with the mayor on remote learning and talked a little bit about our upcoming budget as well. Certainly, we now have open enrollment in the district for individuals who are looking to make changes to their health care or flexible spending. So we're starting to wind down to the end of the year. Certainly, because of timing, I'll just keep my comments brief. So that's all I have to share right now.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mosley. Do any board members have any responses specifically to what Dr. Mosley just shared with us? I'm not seeing or hearing any, so I will move right along to the student member of the board comments. I'm gonna mix it up and go with Mr. Gao first, and then you, Mr. Norris. I usually go the other way because of the way you sit, but, you know, for fun.
I think a lot of the things that Stephen and I were originally planning on saying during this time was mentioned during our conversation, but just as like a general update, I think honestly people are starting to get more used to what's going on, honestly, and it's kind of good to hear that people are putting in more work, it seems to me, in their online classes. And I feel like the first few weeks, people are treating it as like vacation, calling it like Corona-cation. But now I think people are really realizing that, you know, this is kind of a new style, and we kind of have to adapt and have that self-motivation in learning. So I think that's good news.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gao. Mr. North.
I'm gonna err on the same sentiment. So a lot of my stuff was already used in the previous discussion, but I also like make one point. So what Ms. Zine was saying before about the contracts and the teachers, if we were to end early. So I guess my suggestion was that if we wanted to allot that extra 2 weeks at the end of the year for students who needed extra, more personalized help, we could, and the contracts wouldn't have to change. So I think it would be pretty simple to just still have the teachers go to school. It could be used for professional development or extra student help, but students who don't need the extra help could get out on May 29th. So just thank you for putting up with my long comment last time too, so I'll keep it brief this time. Thank you.
That's perfectly all right. It's your time to make your comments on whatever subject you feel is appropriate. It's an interesting suggestion, and I appreciate the outside of the box thinking there. Okay, Committee on Budget, Mr. Guarino.
Yes, we have a meeting on Saturday, I believe, Saturday morning. So public should be aware that we're actually doing this because of this emergency, but we are meeting, I believe, on Saturday morning.
Thank you,
discuss the
Mr.
budget.
Guarino.
Yep.
That'll be at 9, and
Yes.
it will be broadcast through ETV and available for streaming. We have to share ETV with the aldermen, so we're being very creative with our meeting times right now. Committee on Finance and Operations. Ms. Oden, do you have anything other than the EEI contract that we already voted on?
No, that's the only thing that would have been under finance and operations, and that's already been taken care of. I think our next meeting is May 11th. Mr. Donovan, are you still here?
Yes, I am. It is Monday, May 11th. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee on Policy. Ms. Bishop, we haven't heard from your committee in quite some time.
I thought you were going to say you haven't heard from me, and I was like, no.
No, I remember. It's been like 5 minutes. I'm on it.
I know. Okay, so oh shoot, hold on. Yes, so we have a couple of policies to approve. I'm going to quickly go through them. One of them was one that we had discussed before. We wanted just a little bit more information that's in there. So I am just going to go through and read the policies, and we can quickly vote on them. Does that work?
Please just phrase it in the form of a motion so that we can have a second. Mr. Guarino?
Yes, I think if I can share the screen, I have, I think I have them on my
Oh,
computer.
that would be fun.
Let me see if I can get them.
And Ms. Fitzpatrick, are you okay kind of speaking to them if I have any questions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
3 heads are better than 1.
Great. All right, so
okay.
If you can phrase it in the form of a motion, that would be helpful, Ms. Bishop.
Okay.
Let's see.
So the first one is I motion to approve policy ECAR regarding district security procedures as presented.
Hey.
Here it is.
All right. Oh, shoot. I can't see everybody this way. Hold on.
Sorry.
I just need a second.
Yeah, I'll second it,
I'll
but
second.
I really need to see people.
Do we want to discuss this? We discussed it at length at the last meeting we talked about it with. We just wanted to make sure that I think that things were properly posted in regards to trespassing, in regards to who would be on campus, who would be responding,
Lieutenant Lassard's actual title as well.
Right.
Yes.
So yeah,
Okay.
it was, anyway,
Does
if we have
anyone
no comment, we can just go to vote.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions or comments on Ms. Bishop's motion?
I second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guarino, for seconding it and for putting that up on the big screen for us. That's very helpful. So I don't see anybody waving at me that they have a question or comment. So whenever you're ready, we'll do the roll.
Okay, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Excellent. So the next one is I motion to rescind policy 11111 because it is now absorbed into ECA.
Second.
Okay. The motion by Ms. Bishop, seconded by Ms. Ziem. Do we have any comments or questions on that motion? I don't see any. So Mr. Guarino, when you're ready.
Okay. On the motion to rescind 1111.
One.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yeah, one of the four.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Excellent. The next policy, I motion to approve policy KDA regarding public information as presented.
I will second.
Do we have any comments or questions?
I see none. So Mr. Guarino, when you're ready.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Excellent. Moving right along, although we're not birds of a feather, but makes us good. We're all different. So the next one is I motion to approve policy KDCA regarding student conveyed communications as presented. And it's really just to match the format with the rest of our policies.
I will second.
The luck of the draw, you didn't get
Okay.
last.
Are there any questions or comments? Okay. When you're ready, Mr. Guarino.
Okay. On the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Excellent. Okay, so we have two left. The next motion is to approve policy EHAC regarding district mail service as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
This is no changes since 1982, huh?
No.
Yeah,
and
it's
we
just one of
double-
those we have to review.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome.
The policy manual says every policy should be reviewed every 4 years. As you can see, we're out of compliance with our own policy.
As I recall back when I was policy chair.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Guarino.
Okay, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem. Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Excellent. Wow, things used to be much easier, huh? So the last policy, I motion to approve policy FC, managing asbestos in school facilities.
I will second.
Thank you.
Do you have any comments or questions about this policy regarding asbestos?
I just want to
Asbestos.
let people know that Sean Smith reviewed this.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. On the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Zine?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Guarino, for putting that up on the screen for us.
No problem.
Okay, Ms. Bishop, do you have anything else from policy this evening?
No. We can move
Okay.
on.
Our next meeting is June 2nd.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Patrick.
You're welcome.
All right. Committee on Curriculum and Evaluation. Ms. Brown, do you have anything for us this evening?
No, we have not had a meeting since our last Board of Education meeting. Our next meeting will take place in May.
Okay. All right. Ms. Timmons, Committee on Human Resources. Do you have anything for us this evening?
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
Okay. Monday's meeting on the Monday, May 4th. Are we doing recertifications?
Renomination.
No, renominations. I'm sorry. I say
Yes,
that
we
wrong
are.
every time. Okay. So we'll look for that in our packets.
Yep, we'll have some resignations too.
Okay. I don't like to talk about those.
Okay.
Okay, so Monday, May 4th. All right, liaison reports. Ms. Timmons, do you have anything?
Everybody on here can see me though.
I can hear you. Okay, so any liaison reports? I don't see or hear any. Unfinished business, we talked about that at length. New business. I have on new business the development of a redistricting committee. Dr. Mosley, do you think this could wait a week or perhaps two? Okay, does anyone have any objection to bumping this to a future agenda? I don't think anyone's going anywhere in the next couple weeks.
Nope.
Okay, so seeing no objections, Dr. Mosley and I will reschedule that. There is a proposal from Dr. Mosley in our packet, so if you guys can just hang on to that until it comes back onto the agenda again. And then the other item under new business was days versus hours. And many people's comments touched on that this evening. And I know I spoke to Dr. Mosley about this last week when we were talking about the agenda and people asking questions of board members about it. So I was hoping that administration could kind of educate us about where we are and what our requirements are.
Sure. So I'll start, and certainly, the state has a prescribed number of, it's either 180 days or a prescribed hours of time that we have to be in school. And so I just want us to be clear that probably when we started this remote learning, we were feedback that we got from teachers and feedback that we got from parents that we had to modify our day. So we did that. And so to move from hours, because we made that modification to our schedule, we would be challenged to fulfill that number in terms of hours for our schedule, because we've made that modification for our teachers and for our kids to be teaching in the morning, and then the rest of the time they would not be able to, they're not necessarily engaged in teaching. I think one of the challenges that gets that people, it takes some time to realize this, but contractually, all of these contracts are linked, and it really boils down to pupil days, and to end early would have a ripple effect. Number one, we still would have to serve lunch to the food serve, and that would have an impact on our food service workers. Number two, it would start our summer school programming for our special education kids earlier, and that would trigger a change as well. To make this change, because we fall short as a result of the modifications we've made to our schedule. Number one, and number two, we have essentially 4 bargaining units, and even within those bargaining units, there are some challenges. We still need the food service workers, for example. If we ended early, we still need the food service workers here to help serve lunch to our kids. Another factor is that by ending early, we would still be responsible to end early for our secretaries. Well, we actually need some of our secretaries in the buildings to help facilitate the close down of our schools and to actually begin summer school and all of the kind of the end of the year activities that we typically do. Even within the secretary contracts, there are different levels and bargaining units within those contracts that would have for consideration. So it's very challenging in a district this size to just end early because of all of these contracts working in unison, but also really around the 180 days. So my recommendation is to continue with the current school year to 180 days, and that would allow the schools and for us to have a smoother transition for summer programming. We're also in the process, I think Ms. Raymond made reference to this at our last board meeting. I'm not sure which one it is, but we still have to have our faculty and our kids come back to the schools and get their belongings, get their teaching materials. We're still working that out, and it's going to take a lot longer because we're still practicing the social distancing and congregating. And so, for example, a place like the high school, it's probably going to take weeks. And I say weeks because we have to create shifts for people to come into the building, but we also have to coordinate that with our custodians, because once these individuals come back into the building, they have to be kind of re-cleaned and taken care of. That's it in a nutshell. I'm sure it's always a challenge to end early. It's not easy because when you're dealing with the contracts with the unions, once you set that date, that applies to everyone, and we can't just close the buildings down for everyone at the same time because we still have so many different things that we need to get done at the end of the year.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley. Ms. Ziem?
I'd like to ask Dr. Mosley, was it discussed with the unions and they were in agreement with that it was best just to leave it as it is?
The union is always willing to discuss any proposal. Certainly, I've had conversations around that. We've had this conversation about 3 years ago, and that was an education on my part. And certainly, we've had those conversations. But the union would. And I can't speak for the union, but they just want to make sure everyone is compensated if they're going to be let out early. For example, if we let them out early, the union still wants to make sure that all their employees are compensated for the 180 days.
Thank you.
Per contract, right? Because the contract says.
Correct.
Okay.
And we're also, just keep in mind that right now we're still working with the lunch program that's transactional. So we don't have our kids coming to school. So we still want to maintain that level of continuity of services for our kids with our lunch program for our food service workers too. So I think it's very, very complicated to end early. And keep in mind in this environment that we would be compensated people who are not, no pun intended, showing up for work, but we also are in an environment where unemployment is going up and the optics of it might be concerning for some taxpayers.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley. Ms. Johnson and then Ms. Bishop.
Thank you. Because when we modified the days, Dr. Mosley, so what did we, they're only in the mornings now, so that would either count between the days in school or the hours. We have to meet either one. Am I
Correct.
correct? Because I
Yes.
did speak to the State Department of Education.
Yep.
And you know what? I know people want to get out early. It sounds good to get out early, but I agree with you, Dr. Mosley, because, we've got kids that still need the food. We need to have the workers there. And, we just can't say because some people want to get out early. It's just an easy fix. It really isn't. There's too many components to this. So I don't have a problem with it going to June 15th. If something does happen and we could do it a little earlier, that's one thing. But right now, these kids have to, they still have to learn. I know it's a hard transition for everybody, but, come next year, we have to make sure that they're at least able to move back into, hopefully they're going to be back into school in the end of August, beginning of September. So thank you very much.
If I could just add, anytime that we would have to, I'm sorry, there are some people.
Oh, no, please go ahead, Dr. Mosley.
Just realize that if we were to make any modifications, we'd have to come up with a proposal. Then that has to go to the unions, and then they have to ratify that, and that takes even more time because essentially they would have to vote on it.
Okay, Ms. Bishop?
So I would just suggest that if we ever get to a point where the district feels that this is an important thing for us to vote on, let's leave it to the district to present their proposal to us. They know more about the contracts, the union involvement, and the best interest of the teachers. So if we're looking to make any changes, I would look to have a presentation done by the district, and then we can just vote on it. I don't think it needs to be up to the board to come up with the plan. It's just up to the board to come up with if it's good or not. So I say if they need it, come to us and put it on the agenda. Until then, we stick to the schedule we have.
Thank you, Ms. Bishop. Ms. Brown, and then Mr. Norris.
I would like to request the district put together some kind of a proposal or possibility and talk to the different bargaining units with an optional end date to have students finish their remote classroom learning on either May 29th or my preferable date would be June 5th. I think it would be great if we then had the grades and work be turned in by that point, and then have the teachers and paras both continue with some professional development, which we have some times, and they really could use some time to come together and talk about how we could improve the remote learning system and help prep themselves for summer and possibility of future remote learning needs. Also, I think it would give an opportunity we have a few other required professional development seminars that are on the agenda and have been kind of glossed over in this remote time. So it would be a great time to wrap things up. And maybe that would be a good time if the governor's reopened, or we could modify our social distancing protocol. Maybe we could have days during that week that we'd normally be in school all the way to the 15th, where there would still be building personnel available that we could work into getting back into classrooms and getting things cleaned up. So basically, and I'm not making a motion, but I would like to see a potential for ending learning on June 5th or 29th, doing some professional development with continuing with the contract or the food service workers, making sure kids are getting meals, and using those last week or two, the first week or two of June to kind of wrap up the end of the school year and prepare for any other things we need to do for future remote learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
I'm sorry. And I would like to, if it would be great, I know we've got weekly meetings now for the Board of Education. It would be great if we could have that prep for the next one so that we could make some movement.
So the next one is Monday, which is a day away.
And I just want to be very clear. we don't have enough time already. We've modified our school day to 3 hours for instruction or 4 hours. So now what we're doing, if we ended school early like that, we don't qualify for the 180 days. So now what we're dealing with, and I don't know, we're asking, we already have a structure in place for the 180 days. So if we ended school early, then that puts us in jeopardy and not compliance with the state statute on either 180 days, or I think it's 1,200 hours of instructional time. So,
Ms. Johnson knows.
go ahead.
It's 990 hours for grades 7 through 12 and 945 hours through K through 6. And I just want to agree with you, Dr. Mosley. I mean, there's just no way you can do it. You've modified and we've done everything we can to make it easier for the students. And we can't be out of compliance because then we'll have the states and we could probably have the federal government breathing down our necks here. And so it's not realistic.
And again, what I said earlier, if we end school early and we stop it, all of the unions want to stop on that date. We're also jeopardizing our lunch program, and we can't tell the food service workers to come in when they can stay home and get paid if we do that. The other piece to this is be very careful, and the union has been great. They've been great to work with. The teachers have been great with us. Now we're telling them that they have to come back and do professional development, which is not something that's in their contract, which makes it a change in working conditions. And we have to keep good relationships and good working ones, particularly in this environment. I ask that we try to just work together on this and show some compassion and understanding on where, as I shared with you before, this admin team is we're doing remote learning the best we can. And by the time I get this back, I cannot possibly get all this done in one day, in a Saturday, in a Sunday, and ask the admin team to have something ready on Monday.
Right,
So
and I think
I asked the board to please give me some direction on a vote where you'd like me to go with this, because I need to have the support of the board to now go back and start negotiating this with the unions, and I don't know how they're going to take this.
Point of order.
And Ms. Brown.
I think that the request is reasonable. If the administration needs a longer timeline to gather the information, I'm okay with that. But I really believe that once you start talking with the unions and the representation, they are going to be happy with the reduced workload and also the opportunity because there won't be actually actively reaching out to students, but the opportunity to improve their remote learning plans and take care of some professional development that's reasonable. And I don't think it's necessarily going to take we're not going to have to totally modify contracts. We'll probably have to be talking more about extending payment and trying to decide how we're going to equitably pay workers. I'm not, like I said, this is not motion to do this immediately, but I think it's worthwhile to look up because, people I think are starting to run out of steam for the end of the school year, and we're already, and I've realized that the quality of education is not ideal right now. And I think we got to make sure we're helping people make it to the end. I don't know. Thank you. I appreciate.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I appreciate, I think the motivation behind the question, which is to make things better for everybody. And I think this board has shown consistently this year that everyone seems to have the same goal, which is to do the best that we can for the district. And I sincerely appreciate that. From just a historical perspective, we did try a week of professional development last year or the year before, last year.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And we were not able, even with more advanced notice than this, to come to an agreement with the union. So I don't think it's unreasonable for Dr. Mosley to have a conversation with Mr. Macru, but certainly not by Monday. Ms. Ziem, I see you. I have Mr. Norris next, Ms. Johnson, and then you.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify. So I hear June 15th, which I know is the end of school if we're going by the days requirement. Then I hear June 5th and May 29th. I don't know if anybody's put May 29th, but I heard that from somewhere. So I know we have to either comply with the days requirement or the hours requirement. We can't just end early, not following either of those. So is June 5th or May 29th the hours requirement? I don't know if anybody can answer that. Or
So, Dr. Mosley, my understanding is that we need June 15th for both days and hours.
We need it for just the days. Just so I'm clear, because when we did this the last time, Ms. Raymond, the board authorized me to do it.
Yeah.
So if you take the vote and you just tell me to authorize to do this, I can act on kind of like the agent of the board. That's how we did it the last time. And then I came back and did it. So however the board wheels on this and what they'd like me to do, it's perfectly fine. I know there's going to be questions because understanding that you're dealing with now 4 different unions that are going to have different expectations on this. And so I just, if you authorize me to, if that's the will of the board, then I will do that. But if you're authorizing me to do that, that's fine. So I think that I'll look for that direction.
Can we stick a pin in that for just a minute while we focus on Mr. Norris's question? So June 15th was days. Calculating hours, is that still June 15th or would that be earlier?
We don't have enough hours anymore.
Okay, so it would be after June 15th. Yes, okay. Well, that makes the decision, well, I guess the question easier. So Ms. Brown, so to take the pin out of that, knowing now that we don't have enough hours to end early, would you still be interested, Dr. Mosley talked to the union about PD days and such? Because if we don't meet days and we don't meet hours, then we don't meet our statutory requirement for providing education.
I would still be interested in hearing if there is an option for the staff to continue working and assist students on some kind of a modified year-end date for the workload for students to stop what they're doing. I would still like to hear if there's an option for that. And I have full faith in Dr. Mosley that he can negotiate responsibly with the union.
Before we go ahead, Ms. O'Gara.
So I think that comes up to the Department of Education. That requirement comes from them, not from the union. And if we don't meet the time, then something gets invalidated for us as a school district. I don't think anybody's opposed to ending early. It's just that when we did modify that, we can't meet, we'll have to go further on to meet the hours. The days, what you proposed about the days, we could talk to the union about that.
There's a little caveat in the contract. It says pupil days. And essentially the teachers have to be in some ways engaged with those kids during the pupil days. And that goes for the paraprofessionals. It's an ongoing discussion that we've had for quite some time. And so that's the tricky part to this. So, I think this is another kind of quicksand that we're back in. So just give me the direction with the board, the will of the board, I'll do.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley.
Ms.
We've been,
Raymond, can I
yes,
get
hold
in
on.
the queue?
Yep,
No.
you can be after Ms. Seam. We've been bouncing a little bit with our conversation, which is great, because we're all engaged at 8:41 p.m. But I wanted to make sure that Mr. Norris's question was answered to his satisfaction, and that I understood his question and that he got it answered.
Right? That's two just for that.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so then we have Miss Ziem and then Miss Oden, and then we'll circle back to Miss Brown's question.
18 right now. She said 6 and 2 right now is 8.
Unmute. I would like to say, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to say to Dr. Mosley that I so appreciate the explanation. I did not take into account all of the details that you described, and having heard them, I completely support your thinking, and you have my support to leave it as it is. Having said that, I do have another question. One of the things that I have missed in these Zoom meetings is that we don't have our union representative here. And he almost always would come up and share his thoughts on different ideas that had been discussed during the meeting. I'm wondering if it's possible to invite him to these meetings so that he could have a time to share with us any of the union's thoughts that we are missing currently because he cannot come. Or at least that's my understanding. Am I misunderstanding or losing something? That's it.
I
Did
think
you hear me?
I did. I think having Mr. Marco here, or anyone who represents the union is fine. I just, the union has been clear, and we've had some great. We broached this idea about 2 years ago, and the union is very, very clear that they want all their employees to be paid 180 days, and they were very clear about following the contract, particularly the language of the contract. I certainly think.
Oh, and I'm just talking in general now. Now I've gone away from that subject, Dr. Mosley. I'm just saying that that almost at every meeting we had, Mr. Marcoux comes up at the end and shares some of his thinking representing the union. And I always found that valuable. So I'm wondering if he could be invited just to, so that at the end he could do that if he chose to, and feel like the union was part. I don't know. Is that not? Is there may be something I'm missing? And if that's the case, I certainly don't want to suggest something that's not appropriate.
I think there was some question of public comments. If we voted not to have public comments, is it fair to have only union comments and not anyone else in the public? And I feel like there's an equity issue there. And Adam and I have spoken to it.
But isn't that, can I just say, I hear what you're saying, but my concern with the public was that Zoom in the past has had a lot of problems with being hacked into by the public. But I think we're pretty safe that Adam Marcoux is not going to try to mess up our meeting. I think he wants to expedite it and make it better, if anything.
Oh,
so
I agree completely.
Maybe it's a question for legal. Maybe if you could run that by legal to see, because you might be right. I mean, I'm certainly no expert on it. And I appreciate the exchange, because it causes me to think, and that's always a good thing, right?
Yep.
So, but if you could check with legal, maybe.
I absolutely will do that. I'll send out an email to Tom probably in the morning.
I believe they're the member of a public. I think they're considered members of the public. Yeah. So I think.
But I'm happy to email and double check with our attorney. Yeah. There's no reason not to.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, and then I have gotten myself mixed up. I have Miss Oden and Miss Johnson. Did I skip you?
That's okay. I don't need to speak anymore.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Miss Oden.
Okay. I have brought this issue up to Dr. Mosley, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago. But in the past, there have been times when we've gotten waiver for snow days. I think probably 2 or 3 years ago, we had an awful lot of snow days, and we did get a waiver from the state. And what I was thinking, we had 3 snow days. If we could get the state to waive those 3 snow days for students, and we kept our staff for those 3 days to provide professional development, we have children who will not come back the same way they left our schools. We could provide SEL training. We could provide trauma training. What these people are probably going to see, I think our teachers, our paras, our lunchroom monitors, crossing guards, all of them are going to see different students come back. We're going to see different behaviors. We've read across the state and right here in Nashua, the police are concerned about the number of students who are not, the numbers have decreased of students reported to DCYF. And I think that would be 3 good days of professional development. I know a teacher sent me a webinar the other day. It was outstanding. It was on trauma. We had 2 teachers, I believe from Elm Street, in the teacher leadership program last spring, who have done an awful lot of work on that, and they gave a great presentation. So I think it could be valuable professional development days for all of our staff, our cafeteria staff. Once they're done making the lunches and cleaning up, they could even stay and get some training. But I think we could use the days well, but the kids might be able to get out 3 days early. And I'll tell you, by the end of June, with what's going on, it's going to be really difficult for parents in the house, and we're hearing from those parents. So I would hope that you would consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oden. And Ms. Bishop has been waiting patiently.
I would second, well, not second, but I would ditto what Ms. Oden just said. I know that it's not the kind of trauma that we think of when we think of trauma, which is normally violent and bloody and gross. But this is a trauma. And I think doing debriefing, even with the teachers at a certain point, is important. I know that we have people in the school system that are able to attend those trainings to become people who debrief. At the hospital, when we have something happen where nurses are affected, we often meet with them after and process it. I think those days that we're hopefully freeing up, give that opportunity for people who've really experienced a lot of stress during this time to just kind of process it. And then how do we come back next school year stronger and better and more resilient? So I know there are trainings out there, they're online. We can encourage people to go through them. So I hope I agree with Ms. Oden. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Dr. Mosley, regarding the 3 days.
The only thing I could say is, if this is the will of the board, be happy to implement it, be happy to pursue it. I don't know what it feels and looks like under normal circumstances. It's just easier to get what I call people in the room to pursue it and to plan it. This is, something that be happy to, whatever the board decides, I'll put it out there. This has to do with coordinating, not just with the teachers, but just with the secretaries, has to do with the food service workers. It has to do with secretaries, with paraprofessionals. Some of our paras are already doing professional development, as you heard earlier. So I would have to just do some more exploration, reach out to the unions and talk with them and get their perspective. They may not want that. I don't know. But if you were authorizing me to go pursue this with the unions, then I would need to just have that level of endorsement, and then I'll act on it.
I mean, I would say that we certainly can't do a week or 2 weeks because we just don't have the time to make up. Like, we just don't. But Ms. Oden's point about getting snow days waived is an interesting question. And I wonder if there are objections on the board to asking Dr. Mosley to follow up with the state and then the unions. I saw Ms. Zeem's hand. I see wait, hold on, I'm seeing hands. I see Ms. Zeem, I see Ms. Brown, and I see Ms. Bishop. Yes? Yes, okay. Go ahead, Ms. Zeem.
I make a motion that we authorize Dr. Mosley to investigate the possibility of getting a waiver for the 3 days. And if I get a second, I would like to speak quickly to it.
Okay, is there a second for Ms. Zeem's motion?
I'll second
I
it.
second.
There's lots of seconds.
Thank you.
Dottie Oden was first.
No, I want to speak to my motion first.
No,
right?
I meant Dottie was the first one to second in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You go right ahead, Miss Zeem.
I'm intent here. I'm getting tired, so I'm liable to say anything foolish. I just wanted to quickly add that I was fortunate enough to sit in on a seminar that Edelblut, the Commissioner of Education, gave. And in it, he talked about waivers. And I think he said that the waivers, of course, have to go through the State Board of Education. But I still think that if we, and I have to believe that they would consider that in this pandemic and all of this COVID and all of this trauma and stress that we've had, I have to think that they're going to try to be flexible and work with us as best they can. Having said that, that certainly doesn't negate that Dr. Mosley will have to see what the unions and what the other four contractors, you know, the four unions, if you will, whether they're in agreement and we can resolve that issue. But if they can, I think it would be well worth the effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ziem. And then, I'm sorry, but I had after, oh shoot, I wrote it down. There it is. Ms. Brown and then Ms. Bishop.
No, thank you. I would just make sure that the motion is actually to allow Dr. Mosley to look into getting a waiver for as many days as possible because it gives us more flexibility, not necessarily just 3. So there you go.
Okay, does any, Ms. Ziem is shaking her head. She does not want to do a
Motion is
friendly
3
amendment.
days because I believe we have, first off, I believe it goes to Dr. Mosley's, and I'm certainly not trying to offend Jessica, you're a valuable board member, and I so appreciate your contributions. It's just that I feel that when we get into these contracts and the contracts are binding. I mean, they, you know, and it's too difficult. We might have, this might be something that we could actually get 3 days, and 3 days would be better than no days. So I think planning realistically, I just don't see the other as being realistic, but that doesn't mean I'm one vote. And I can lose. I have many times before.
Okay. I see you, Dr. Mosley, but I would like to have Ms. speak first and then you, if that's all right, or did you need to respond before Ms. Bishop?
No, I was just like agreeing. I had nothing to say.
Oh, okay. That was a thumbs up. Go ahead, Dr. Mosley. Thank you for your patience.
I just want the board to know that the intent of me, if you authorize this, is to ask the union to make some considerations on their working conditions as they exist right now. So it's not just looking into the waiving of the 3 days. The intent, and what I hear from the board, is to say professional development, some other things. And I just want them to know that's the intent. And, you know, and we're going to start exploring going into these contracts if we decide to get these 3 days waived or not. So it's just, you know, yes, I don't really need, I mean, I could always look into the 3 days and do that. I'll do that anyways. If that, yeah, I can do that. The question becomes, these 3 days can be contractually complicated, and I need to have that authorization from the board to do that.
So you're looking for Ms. Ziem's motion to also authorize you to speak to the union about professional development for those 3 days.
On behalf of the board.
On the behalf of the board. Ms. Ziem, is that the intent of your motion? Okay.
Absolutely. I appreciate the addition.
Okay. So will you take that as a friendly amendment to your?
Yes.
Changing the working calendar as it exists for the 180 days with the intent of doing some professional development. If we get the waiver or we don't get the waiver, that all factors into that as well.
Right. If there's no waiver, then there's no need for discussions of professional development. I see Ms. Johnson and Ms. Kinsanella. Tara, do you have something that we need to know right in the middle?
I just wanted to remind everyone that the state has already waived the 5 days for all districts to set up remote learning. So every district has gotten 5 days.
So we'll see.
And if we do go for a waiver, it has to be submitted to the state by May 8th.
Okay. Yes, that's valuable information. Thank you so much, Ms. Kinsanella.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson, I appreciate your patience.
No problem. So I guess my question is here. We're going to ask Dr. Mosley to he's going to put in a waiver to the state to see if we can get 3 days. And in the process of doing that, he's going to talk to the union to see if we can do something for these 3 days, if in fact we get a waiver. Am I correct here?
Yes.
Okay.
Do something regarding professional development for
Development.
staff.
Okay, don't you think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse here? I mean, why would you talk on something if you don't know if you're going to get it? I mean, first you ask the state for the waiver because you're asking for something that might not even happen. And then, you know, this is a time-consuming thing. This isn't just an easy discussion with the union. If anybody's been on boards before, you know that it's a long discussion with the union. We have a contract in place, and, you know, we're disturbing everything. If we can't get the waiver, then it's a moot point. There's not even another word that can be said because you can't do anything. The state has to allow us these 3 days, and if the state's not going to allow us the 3 days, it's a moot point. Thank you.
Point taken. Thank you. Ms. Johnson, Ms. Brown. No, Ms. Brown doesn't want to say something. Okay. Ms. Zine? No? Okay. You know, I would just say that, you know, Dr. Mosley could also call up Mr. Marcoux, and Mr. Marcoux could be like, no way. So I think a no on either side stops the discussion. So I would hate for Dr. Mosley to put in extra work on something that's not going anywhere. He certainly has sufficient things to fill his time. So, perhaps a little bit more. Okay. Is anybody else needing to speak on this motion? Are we ready to take the roll? I don't see any hands, so Mr. Guarino, can you take the roll on the motion to authorize Dr. Mosley to seek a waiver for 3 snow days to let the students out and to speak to the union regarding having professional development for staff those days? No? Dr. Mosley?
On behalf of the board.
On behalf of the board.
Okay.
Mrs. Raymond?
Yes, Ms. Johnson.
I'd like to amend the motion and split it into 2 motions. The first motion is to authorize Dr. Mosley to talk to the state. And if in fact Dr. Mosley gets an affirmative that he can, we can lose 3 days, then for him to talk to the union. Because if he does, if it's all in one motion, I'm not voting for it. First, again, you're putting the cart before the horse. You have to have him talk to the state first before he does anything else. Because otherwise, talking to the unions and he can't get the waiver is a waste of his time. And his time is more valuable.
I under if time weren't a constraint, but because according to what I heard at the seminar last week, it has to be voted on by the State Board of Education. They probably only meet once a month. So I don't have any idea when they meet, but I know, going to your point about time and the meetings and getting everything to fit into that time, and I don't think that Mr. Marcoux is going to mind 10 minutes of conversation. But to be honest with you, I would leave that to Dr. Mosley, who he wants to contact first. I think he has a feeling now for what the board would like for him to at least investigate, and he can investigate it in any order he chooses to, because he knows the date by which the motion has to be in, you know, the motion for the waiver has to be in place at state. Thank you.
I'd like to rebut that a little bit, please.
Oh, can I ask for a second for your amendment, please?
Okay.
Or did you want to rebut first?
I'll rebut first because, you know, it's very simple. Again, you have only a time frame for the state. If in fact the state comes back and says, no, there's no point to talk to the union, and Dr. Mosley has more important things right now that he has to do to get done, to get the school year done, and this whole COVID virus nightmare that has put us into. Again, you got to talk to the State Board of Education before you can do anything else. So my amendment is just the way I left it. He talks to the state first, he comes back, and then he can have a conversation with the union, because he should, why put him through all this in his busy days? Thank
Is
you.
there a second for Ms. Johnson's amendment?
I second that.
Okay, seconded by Ms. Timmons. Can we have a vote on the amendment, please, Mr. Guarino?
Waiting for this.
Can you clarify the amendment for me, please? I'm sorry.
That's okay. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Johnson, is to split the motion into two motions. So the first is to authorize Dr. Mosley to seek a waiver for the 3 snow days from the state. And then the second amendment is, if he gets that, then for him to speak to the union about, on behalf of the board, about negotiating for professional development those days.
Exactly. Thank
I got
you.
the word this time, Dr. Mosley.
Can
I
just-
wrote them down, and that's the important part.
just want again, I just want to clarify, and trust me, so if I get confirmation from the state that that they'll waive those 3 days, then I can negotiate or talk to the board talk to the unions on behalf of the board about modifying the last 3 days. Is that
Is that correct about your amendment, Ms. Johnson?
Yep.
Okay.
See, I think I understood Ms. Johnson's amendment to mean that it doesn't really matter which order he does it in because we're giving him access to negotiate with the teachers, and also we're giving him authority to send in a form for a waiver.
Okay,
Nope.
so
You said dividing it into 2 motions, right? Are we or you're
So-
making them time sensitive? One has to come follow the other.
yes.
Right.
That's
So
Ms.
yes, I'm glad you asked the question so that we could clarify it. Ms. Johnson has clarified that her amendment is sequential.
Right.
Only if we get the waiver should Dr. Mosley speak to the union on behalf of the board.
Exactly.
Okay, so a yes vote for the amendment would say sequential. A no vote would be just keep Ms. Eames the way it is. And you can vote either way, and we still have to vote on Ms. Eames separately.
Are you ready for the vote, Madam
Yes.
President? Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem,
No.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
yes. Ms. Gilio,
No.
Ms. Raymond,
No.
Ms. Brown,
No.
Ms. Oden,
Ms. Oden, are you there?
Ms. Oden, you're on mute.
I am, I'm sorry, no.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Okay, I have 1, 2, 3 yeses and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 noes.
Okay, so it fails. So now on to the original motion, which was both of those things, but kind of concurrently or in the order
Right.
that Dr. Mosley feels is appropriate.
Okay, on the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
No.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
No.
Ms. Gilio,
No.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yeses, 3 noes. Motion carries.
Okay. Okay, do we have anything else to speak about regarding our school calendar? Oh, yes, we do. Ms. Kitsanella has included in our packet a revised calendar that has indicated the red week that the state waived already, crossing out the half a days because we're kind of doing all half a days, and having our current tentative last day be the 15th. Well, our current last day is the 15th. We're looking for a motion to approve this revised calendar, especially just to reflect so people aren't confused about the half days.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Guarino, seconded by Ms. Ziem. That's correct, Ms. Kinsella. Yes, what you're looking for? Yes, okay. Does anyone need to talk about this? Oh, look, everyone's shaking their head now. Or making no face whatsoever. So I'm going to take that as a no. On the motion, Mr. Guarino.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Norris. I didn't see you.
Will this impact what we were talking about before? Will we have to reapprove this if we decide to get the last three days waived, or Just
Wait,
clarify.
was someone just talking an answer? So the answer is maybe. So if, for example, Dr. Mosley gets the waiver and the union is willing to work with us and do some PD and everything works out great, then Dr. Mosley will come back to us and we will change those 3 days. But given that there are some half days coming up, I think it's prudent to go ahead and let the world know that we're not having those half days. Is that reasonable? Dr. Mosley, is that an acceptable? Yeah, okay. Sometimes I think I understand, but then,
I'm shaking my head, yes.
okay. But then I'm getting like a subtle, no, you didn't. Okay. So on the motion to approve the revision that was in our packets and that I have held up for the screen for the world.
Okay, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem? Ms. Ziem? Yes, okay. Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, thank you. So the next item, we've left public comments on here, but we've suspended them during the crisis. So the last item on the agenda is board member comments. I'm just going to go as my screen shows me your faces and ask you if you have a comment. Mr. Guarino.
Yes, I have one very quick comment. I just want to thank all of our teachers in the district who are carrying on under these very tough circumstances. And that goes to all the staff, not as well as the teachers. And I also want to apologize for the teachers if we made their grading a headache, because I think that might have, what we have done tonight might have made it a little tougher for them to do grading, but we're going to get through this, I think, and hopefully we'll get back to normal next September, I'm hoping. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the board members and the administration for having the patience to sit through almost 5 hours of our meetings now, because they're on Zoom, which I still can't get used to these meetings zooming away here, and I'm on it all day long meetings. It's kind of, I get very frustrated with it. It's a long process, and I'm not a type of person who can sit, I'm always out and about. But what I wanted to say, I want to go back to last week on the graduation, because I've gotten some emails and parents, still upset. And I think that this could have worked out. I don't know if everybody can see the newspaper, and it says here, if they play, would they come? And this is what I was talking about, how we could spread everybody out. And I think with the help of Bobby Bagley, with Stellos and Holman, social distancing, I think it could have worked. And just like I fought for the grading system tonight, August, I've heard from people saying August is not going to work. Virtual graduation, and it's really sad that I think we could have, as a board, as administration, and as with the principals, I think we really could have worked this out between two stadiums. And I would have been more than happy with my mask and my social distancing to usher people to their seats and make sure that social distancing was there, and blue tape, red tape, or yellow tape the people where they couldn't sit. And I'm hoping maybe we can still work something out for our students to graduate when the warm weather comes in June, 3 weekends, break them up, 800 students, break them up by the alphabet, and a limit of 2 guests. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Gilio, you're next on my screen.
I have no comment tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Ziem, you're on mute.
I would like to say that I thought that the comments by Jen Bishop, I think, anyway, when she apologized to the public, to those people who have been in such anguish and such trauma. I would just like to say that it was very moving for me, and I think it reflects the attitude of the majority of our board. Certainly nobody here wants to do anything that makes it harder in this very difficult time. And so I just want to reassure all of the public that this board, however imperfect we may be, I believe that the heart intent of all of our members is to relay to you our deepest concerns and our deepest regrets that any of us are having to go through this, and to tell you that if we in any way made it harder for you, it certainly was not our intent. That we have our greatest wish is for all of us to be back where we were before this all happened and be able to forget it. Having said that, good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ziem. Let's see, Ms. Timmons, you're next.
Oh, thank you. I echo what Ms. Ziem just said, and also I'd like to thank Joshua and Stephen for their input. It was very valuable. Thank you very much. You guys are great. I also agree these 5-hour meetings is very taxing, but we do have a great board, and I hope the public realize that we are indeed trying to do the best for our district. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Timmons. Ms. Brown?
Thank you. I want to thank all of our constituents who took the time to email in or send us their comments this week. I think that's in this time of remote learning and making it difficult to do public comments. I just want to remind everybody that our board email address that comes to all of us is boe@nashua.edu. It comes to all of the 9 board members, and we all get to read it. And thank you. Just keep them coming because we want to hear from you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. Ms. Bishop?
Hi. So I don't have much to say again, but I do want to just thank everybody that we're working with, the students, the teachers, the board, the administration. None of this is easy. There's no good decision. There's no right decision. And unfortunately, there's no wrong decision. We can't narrow our playing field. We can't redirect our path. We have what is in front of us. If we just keep speaking to each other and we keep relaying information, we're going to get to the end of this. And we're going to get to the end of this as well as we keep our faces on. I'm struggling a little bit in sharing this because I think it's a little important, because all of the people that are going through this moment in time, when I was 15 and I was a sophomore at Nashua High, that was when sophomore was the first year, my dad died in September. Devastating. I learned a lot of resiliency in that moment. I feel like I really identify with the students right now, because everything's shaken up. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody has a plan. The plans that we had are completely gone. We're reinventing ourselves. We're trying to figure out who we're going to be with this new information. This is not an easy time. I completely understand the shaky ground that you're sitting on. If it weren't for my teachers, if it weren't for my peers, if it weren't for my mom, I don't know who I would have been. I think your teachers know exactly what you need. I think administration knows what you need. I think the adults are here to help. We know a little bit about stuff. And I hope that we can all understand and recognize that our best is trying to be done. We do come to the table with some experiences. We value everybody. We want everybody to be successful. We want us to be successful. We want your teachers to be successful. But our hearts are out to you guys. This is your life. This is the pivot point that is going to redefine who you are. And I hope, and I pray to God that we are making the right decision for you guys. And it's done with thought, and it's done with care, and it's done with the teachers in mind, the administration in mind, with your parents in mind. I think there's a certain amount of us inside of us that love all of you and want you to be successful. So please keep emailing, keep sharing your thoughts. Know that I get it. I'm sure many other people get it. Just keep the lines of communication open. We want to do our best and we can't do it without you guys talking. Thank you, Mr. Norris and Mr. Gao, for all of the things that you've shared. I know that you worked really hard on putting together your thoughts and speaking with your peers. I love the community organizing that you guys have done. It shows a great amount of fortitude and who you're going to be as real adults. I'm very proud of you. I'm proud of our students. I'm proud of everybody. Nothing about this is right. Nothing about this is fair. But you have an entire board behind you in your success, however it looks. We only want the best for you. So thank you. And keep up the hard work. You guys we're all doing a good job. So good night.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Bishop. Ms. Oden.
I just want to thank all the parents, the students, and the teachers that wrote to us. We read some very heartfelt emails from our teachers and what they're dealing with. We have seen just heartfelt from our parents, what they're struggling with this remote learning. And I'm seeing it, some people becoming more desperate as it's going on. So that's what if we can get the kids out 3 days and take some PD for our staff, because there's going to be a lot of damage from this. I want to thank administration for all their work in this, and I just hope the rest of our meetings can be a lot shorter than this.
Thank you, Ms. Oden. I agree completely with shorter meetings. That was the whole idea of meeting weekly, is that we would meet for less time. But we all have a lot to say, and I appreciate that that as we've come together, reasonable people can disagree on things and do so in a respectful manner. I cannot follow up on Ms. Bishop. She's just incredibly well spoken, so I'm not even going to try. Just know all of the other parents who are out there trying to work and have parent and help your kids with school and be stuck at home all the time with all your favorite people. I'm with you. We're all going stir crazy together, and hopefully the weather will change soon. The next meeting is budget, Saturday morning at 9 a.m. I didn't vote for that, in case anybody's wondering. I would like to sleep in, but my kids will be up anyways because we don't understand Saturdays. And then the next full board meeting is Monday at, I forget, 5 again? I think we all just agreed it was 5 again. So we will see everybody again on Saturday and again on Monday. Oh, Mr. Norris and Mr. Gao have questions.
Is there a non-meeting before, the hour before again, like this meeting was?
I don't remember. No, Dr. Mosley's shaking his head no. So is it 5 on Monday, Ms. Kinsella? Am I wrong?
5:30.
5:30. 5:30 on Monday. I will see you all there.
All right. Have a good night,
So
everyone.
wait, we need a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Okay, Mr. Gao. Wait, Mr. Gao.
Oh, one quick thing. I just wanted to actually thank all of you, not just as like board members, but as the people you are. I feel like after the decision last week, as the board, you could have just kept it as where it was. But after hearing the voice of the constituents and after analyzing like truly what's best for the students, we went through like an hour, 2 hours of discussion to change it. So I really want to thank you for that. And also, I wanted to thank Ms. Brown for sharing her statement. I do think it's really disheartening to hear that people are responding this way, and I hope that that is something we address after this whole pandemic, the culture of our schools, I suppose, the way we look at education, the way we look at schools. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gao. I think I heard a motion to adjourn from Ms. Timmons. Is that correct? And did someone second it? Okay,
Seconded.
Gilio?
Ms. Gilio, Ms. Johnson. Okay, it's very late. Can we have the roll?
Okay, on the motion to adjourn, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Zine,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries. Adjourned at 9:22 p.m.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Have a
Good
good
night.
Have a
night.
great night.